evening, and welcome to the Timberlane Regional School District Budget Committee public hearing on the 2019-2020 budget. My name is Michael Mascola. I'm the chair of the Budget Committee. Kathy, can you please call the roll of both boards?
The Budget Committee. Peter Bielo.
Here.
Alan David.
Here.
David Burns.
Here.
Julie Hammond. Here. John Hughes.
Here.
Michael Mascola.
Here.
Todd McCormick.
Here.
Phil Sherwood.
Here.
For the school board, Brian Boyle.
Here.
Lee Doobie.
Here.
Kim Farah. Here. Sheila Rose. Here. Sarah Mockler. Here. Sean O'Neill.
Here.
Kristen Savage. Sue Sherman. Here. Jennifer Silva. Here. Also seated with the board and the committee this evening are the superintendent of schools, Dr. Earl Metzler, and the CFO business administrator, Mr. Jeff Dabb.
Thank you. Would you please all join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so we have a presentation to go through that will describe the budget, the proposed budget, and later on will be some information regarding the default budget. What I'd like to do for my portion here is go through just some ground rules and some general information, and then we'll get into our budget. I'm just going to read, just for redundancy here, the members of the Timberlane Budget Committee: Peter Bielo, Plastow. Brian Boyle was the liaison, he's from Atkinson. Alan David, Sandown. David Gurns, Plastow, is the vice chair. Kathleen Gorman, Sandown. Julie Hammond, Atkinson. John Hughes, Danville. Myself, Plastow. Todd McCormick, Danville. And Phil Sherwood, Atkinson. And that's the budget committee that prepared the proposed budget for this year. The school board was seated to my left, all the way to the end. We have Brian Boyle, Atkinson, Lee Doobie, Sandown, Kimberly Farah, Dr. Farah, Danville, Sheila Lowe's, Sandown, Sarah Meckermer, Plastow, Sean O'Neill, Danville, Kristen Savage, Plastow, Sue Sherman, Plastow, she is the chair, Jennifer Silver, Atkinson. The agenda for this evening, I'm going to go over the first and second sessions of our annual meeting. I'm going to go over Article 2, which is our operating budget. This will include a review of the budget process. I do want to make sure I've asked Peter Bielo to follow along with the slide, so if somebody catches me out of sync, just let me know. And thank you, Peter. Article 3, we'll talk about the Capital Reserve Fund. Article 4, we'll talk about the Performing Arts Center outer wall replacement. Article 5, 3-year collective bargaining agreement for the Timberlane Teachers Association. Article 6, charges for professional banking and brokerage assistance for reserve funds and trust funds. Article 7, change trustees of trust funds. Article 8, general acceptance of reports. Article 9, SAU 55 withdrawal study by petition of Stephanie Doobie. Article 10, transportation costs by petition of Peter Bielo. Article 11, high school athletic track by petition of Rob Collins. Article 12, amendment articles of agreement to weighted voting by petition of Jack Sapia. Article 13, amend articles of agreement specific to board membership by petition of Jack Sapia. So we have a full agenda for this evening. So let me tell you about the purpose of our public hearing. First of all, this is a preview of what's coming down the road, which will be our deliberative session, which we'll find in a couple of weeks. So tonight, the goal is to present this information to our members, our residents in front of us, and the people watching at home. We're also looking to allow for public testimony and questions on information that we provide regarding the budget prior to finalization by the Budget Committee. After the public hearing tonight, the Budget Committee is going to meet in a budget meeting. It's open to the public, and we're looking to formalize the budget for presentation to the deliberative session. Only the Budget Committee members can make motions to change the budget at the public hearing. Meeting ground rules. Can you all please silence your cell phone? I'm going to apologize in advance, but I am expecting a very, very important call, and if I do have to step out, I'm going to ask David Gerns to fill in for me in my immediate absence. If you do come to the microphone on the floor, there's two of them right in front of the stage. Could you please stand right in front of the microphone, wait for your to be recognized, and just state your name and what town you are from. I'm going to ask everybody, this is common sense, but please be respectful. No profanity, no personal attacks, no rudeness, slanderous remarks. None of this will be tolerated. And offenders will be asked to leave the meeting. I don't anticipate any problems. Comments shall be limited to the topic at hand, just to keep the meeting flowing in a good fashion. Speakers will be allotted up to 5 minutes to make their statement. I'm looking to allow people who have not spoken to a topic to also speak instead of having one person always in front of the microphone. The chair reserves the right to discontinue comment on a topic in order to move the meeting along. With that being said, those are my basic guidelines to hold a productive meeting. So now I'm going to get into the first session of our annual meeting. And what I'm going to do is, if you go along in your packets, I'm going to ask each of my budget committee members, my fellow budget committee members, to just help me, and they're each going to read a portion of it, so you don't have to hear my voice all night. So first up, David Gerns, can you please address the first session?
Good evening. The first session of the annual meeting, the deliberative session. You are hereby notified to meet at the Timberlane High School, 636 Greeno Road, Glasgow, New Hampshire, on Thursday, the 7th day of February, 2019 at 7 p.m. This session shall consist of explanations, discussion, and debate of warrant articles number 2 through 13. Warrant articles may be amended subject to the following limitations. First, warrant articles whose wording is prescribed by law shall not be amended. B, warrant articles that are amended shall be placed on the official ballot for final vote of the main motion as amended. And C, no warrant article shall be amended to eliminate the subject matter of the article.
Thank you. And David, can you also read the second session of the annual meeting?
The second session of the annual meeting for voting. Voting on warrant articles numbers 1 through number 13 will be conducted by official ballot to be held in conjunction with the town meeting voting to be held on Tuesday, the 12th day of March, 2019. At the town election polls in Atkinson, Danville, Plastow, and Sandown, New Hampshire. Atkinson, voting will be conducted at the Atkinson Community Center from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. In Danville, voting will be conducted at the Danville Community Center from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. In Plastow, voting will be conducted at Pollard School from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. And the Sandown voting will be conducted at the Sandown Town Hall from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Thank you. Before I go on with Article 2, I just want to let everybody know, if you're looking for a copy of tonight's presentation, Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, but they can find this on our website, correct? Here we go. All right, Article 2, operating budget. Julie, would you please read Article 2?
Sure. Article 2, operating budget, shall the voters of the Timberlane Regional School District raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amount set forth on the budget posted with the warrant or as amended by vote of the first session for the purposes set forth therein, totaling $71,733,700. Should this article be defeated, the operating budget shall be $70,930,105, which is the same as last year with certain adjustments required by previous action of the Timberlane Regional School District or by law. Or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 40:13, X and 10 and 16 to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. Note, warrant Article 2, the operating budget, does not include appropriations proposed under any other warrant articles. Majority vote required.
Thank you. Next up is the budget process, and John Hughes.
The budget process, developed in accordance to applicable New Hampshire statutes, RSAs 32, 33, and 195. Incorporation of the committee's mission statement. The Budget Committee will develop a fiscally sound annual budget that will optimally meet the needs of the district by working with district personnel and in consultation with the school board. Throughout the budget process, the Budget Committee will take into consideration district taxpayers as well as support for staff, rigor, evaluation, and accountability initiatives to drive student achievement.
You continue to the next page, John.
Review of actual expenditures in prior years. Consideration for staffing and enrollment projections. Deliberation of capital improvements requested within the Capital Improvement Plan, CIP. Collaboration with administrators, department heads, teachers, and others.
Thank you. Next up would be the budget overview. And I'm going to ask Todd McCormick if you could please read that one.
Sure. Budget overview. 2018-2019 budget was $71,870,606. This excludes capital reserve contributions voted. The 2019-2020 proposed budget is $71,733,700. That's a net change of less 136,906, or 0.19% lower than last year.
Todd, can you also do the budget drivers, please?
Okay. Major budget increases, which include increases over 25,000. Student transportation, 421,958. Fund transfers, 257,500. Benefits, 231,000. Professional services, 144,904. Repair and maintenance, 118,332. And supplies, 56,370.
Thank you. Oh, I have you down for one more. Okay.
Major budget decreases of greater than 25,000. Tuition, down 26,112. Travel workshops, down 27,168. Books, info, resources, and software, down 80,255. The bond, principal, and interest is down 84,000. Site and building projects, down $100,001. Utilities, energy, down 113,519. And salaries, down 981,850.
Thank you, Todd. Next up is to give an overview of our budget by object code. And I'm going to ask Phil Sherwood if he could read some of our most difficult pages here.
Much appreciated. Budget by object code. Object code 1XX, total salaries, $85,000, difference from 2018, 2019, less $981,815. 210 group insurance. $10,240,159 is the 2019, 2020 proposed budget. The difference from 2018, 2019 is $811,153. Object Code 220, Social Security contributions, 1920 proposed is $2,497,376. That's less $219,748. Object Code 231, non-teacher retirement, 2019-2020 proposed, $799,804. That's less $47,953. Object Code 232, teacher retirement, 2020 proposed is $4,699,723. Difference from 18-19, that's less $311,439. Object Code 240, tuition reimbursement, 2020 proposed, $211,507. Difference from 18-19, less $1,742. Object Code 250, unemployment compensation, 2019-2020 proposed, $30,000. Difference from 18-19, 0. Object Code 260, workers' comp, 2019-2020 proposed, $193,000. Difference from 18-19, $272. 290, Object Code, other employee benefits, 2019-2020 proposed, $35,000. Difference from 18-19, $1,000. Subtotal salaries and benefits, 2019-2020 proposed, $52,791,789. A difference from 18-19, less $750,815.
Phil, can you please read the next page?
Sure. Budget by object code. Object code 519, student transportation, 2019-2020 proposed, $3,358,716. Difference from 2018-2019, $421,958. 930, object code, fund transfers, $2,777,500,000. Difference from 2018-2019, $257,500,000. Object code 320 through 340, professional services, 2019-2020 proposed, $1,288,988,000. $980, excuse me, $1,288,988. Difference from 2018-2019, $144,904. Object code 43X, repair and maintenance, 2019-2020 proposed, $582,259. Difference from 2018-19, $118,332. Object code 610 supplies, 2019-2020 proposed, $1,239,116. Difference from 18-19, $56,370. 73X equipment, 2019-2020 proposed, $485,260. Difference from 18-19, $20,016. Object code 53X, telephone and communications, 2019-20 proposed, $200,480. Difference from 18-19, $15,301. 410, object code, water, sewer, and septic, 2019-2020 proposed, $40,000. Difference from 18-19, $10,000. Object code 88890, miscellaneous expense, 2019-20 proposed, $104,354. Difference from 18-19, $9,993. Object code 42, snow removal, proposed budget $15,000. Difference from 18-19, $4,000. 810, object code dues and fees, proposed budget $74,819. Difference from 18-19, $545.
Thank you, Phil. I'm going to continue on with more about budget by object code and ask Alan David if you could continue reading the rest of the object code.
I'm going to refer to the 2019-2020 as proposed, and I'm going to refer to the 2018-2019 budget as voted. 490, other purchase property services, proposed $5,001, voted $6 more. Last $310,000 official administration services, $1,696,092 proposed, voted 0. Rental, 441 rental land and building, $1, voted 0. Insurance, 520, 2004.
Point of order.
Sorry.
That's not voted.
What's
Okay,
that?
so it's 441, try that.
So,
It's the difference.
it's a difference, the difference was voted last year, that was on the budget last year was 0. Just trying to make it go quicker, that's all. I mean, I can read the whole, I can read difference 2018, 2019.
I think you just reversed it, it was in inverted.
Oh, that was, okay, I'm sorry. Where were we? Okay, so insurance, 520, 2004, 800, 0 voted. For 534, postage, proposed 5,300, difference 2018-19 budget, $300 less. 550 printing, voted 12,595, opposed was 12,595, voted less 961. 420 cleaning services, 123,500, proposed, voted 2018-19, 1,700 less. For advertising, 540, proposed 4,000, less 4,000 2018-19 budget. 540 advertising, 2019-20 proposed 4,000, difference 2018-19, less 4,000. 930 game expense, proposed 84,449, difference from 2018-2019 is less 7,000. Tuition 56X, proposed 2,461,200, voted 26,112, less. 580 travel workshop, proposed 50,816, difference 2018-2019 is less 27,168. And object code 6X/650 books info resources, proposed 933,864 voted, was less 80,255. Object code 830,910 board principal and interest, proposed $1,642,000. Difference voted less 84,000. Object code 450 instruction services, proposed 400,000, voted less 100,001. 62X utilities / energy, proposed 971,201, voted less 113,519. Subtotal expenses, $18,941,911. Difference voted 613,909. Total 71,733,700, and the difference of 136,906.
Thank you, Alan. So that is a very brief overview of our budget, the proposed budget. So I'm now going to open up the floor if anybody has public comment on our proposed operating budget. When you come to the microphone, if you can please state your name and your town.
Jack Sapia, 5 Crystal Hill Road, Atkinson, New Hampshire. Couple quick questions. Could someone go over the capital, what you approved for capital this year and where that's earmarked? And I would ask the budget committee, and by the way, thank you for doing a good job this year. I appreciate it. Got to watch the last couple of meetings, and I found them to be quite informative. Mr. Burns, I think you hit the nail on the head a week or so ago. You let the data drive your decisions. So for that, I appreciate you. But again, capital, I think we don't put enough funds towards capital. And the last question for you guys is the middle school roof. I'm concerned with the leaks and the problems with that, and whether that was proposed or presented to you. But again, the facilities and general maintenance is always a concern, And if someone can give me the philosophy behind your approach, that'd be greatly appreciated.
Before you leave,
Yes,
please.
sir. Yes, neighbor.
Can you, neighbor, can you just shorten the question real quick and address it to the...
Okay, capital expenditures, please explain that to me, how you derived that number. I missed that. 2, middle school roof, why isn't it in the budget? I believe it should be. And that's good enough.
Anyone want to take a stab at that? Go ahead, David.
Budget drive.
We voted, we included in the proposed budget, $500,000 for CIP. $400,000 is what is to be for buildings. Among other things were roofs, but was suggested, but we didn't define the specific projects. We just defined how much we were able to configure or determine what we could afford this year.
But was that
And
based on-
$100,000 is what we call for property.
Right.
So it's $400,000 for buildings, and a number of the projects that were suggested as a priority to us was roofs.
So there were specific,
But that's, with the actual, how it's gonna be prioritized is up to administration. We just, all right, you got $400,000 for that. And we have $100,000 for maintenance on property.
okay, and, I mean, and I guess just,
And they, once again, how that will be spent will be determined by.
but there were specific pieces of data presented to you.
Yes,
which
there was a
drove your
number of
decision.
projects presented as part of the CIP presentation.
Fair enough, and just because I was involved in CIP in my tenure here, the middle school roof, again, is way past its life expectancy. I would ask you to reconsider the replacement of that. We deferred that 1 year for the paving in the middle school. I know you guys go back and brainstorm this, but my concern is failures. It's no longer things like the turf, it's things that may fail and, you know, have an effect on the students. So thank you very much.
And just for the general public to know, we did review the CIP, we had the CIP presented to us probably about a month ago by Sue Sherman and Tom Geary. Okay. Go ahead, Rob.
Rob Collins, Danville, New Hampshire. To follow up on that, I had a question. The board recommended to the budget committee capital expenses, I believe, of $940,000 approximately. And when the budget committee tried to increase the capital line from 500 to that number in a meeting, I think it was December 17th, the liaison from the school board voted against that. So I was wondering, Mr. Boyle, if you could explain why you voted against the number that the school board wanted.
I believe what I voted was against individual. I was voting for bottom line. I think I explained myself that night.
No, it was for the capital
Right.
number.
It was right, but built into that, I believe my vote, and I think I said it that evening, is there was 2 or 3 adjustments to the budget. And I was trying to get the budget committee to go right to the bottom line of the bill. That's why I voted against any individual thing that evening, because I was going to the bottom line.
But at that point, the board hadn't recommended a bottom line, I don't think, right?
I think they had, but
So you didn't support the capital number that the board wanted? Is that
I don't
correct?
believe you're correctly presenting my position, Rob. I mean, I support all kinds of capital, but on that one vote, I wanted to see how it reflected in the bottom line of the proposed budget.
Okay.
That was my rationale.
So if I could ask questions about the default budget?
And not at this point, I just want to go through
Okay.
the proposed, but we will definitely have a default session.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Are there any other comments on the 1920 proposed budget? Okay, not seeing anybody jumping up. I'm going to move on to the next section. which is the default budget. And at this point, I'm going to turn this over to Chairwoman Sue Sherman.
Thank you, Mr. Mascola. Default budget prepared by the school board, RSA 40:13-1X-B, default budget, as used in this subdivision means the amount of the same appropriations as contained in the operating budget authorized for the previous year, reduced and increased, as the case may be, by debt service, contracts, and other obligations previously incurred or mandated by law, and reduced by one-time expenditures contained in the operating budget, and by salaries and benefits of positions that have been eliminated in the proposed budget. For the purposes of this paragraph, one-time expenditures shall be appropriations not likely to recur in the succeeding budget, and eliminated positions shall not include vacant positions under recruitment or positions redefined in the proposed operating budget as determined by the governing body, unless the provisions of RSA 40:14B are adopted of the local political subdivision. In calculating the default budget amount, the governing body shall follow the statutory formula, which may result in a higher or lower amount than the proposed operating budget. RSA 40:1.3, I believe that is, 1XC, contracts. As used in this subdivision means contracts previously approved in the amount so approved by the legislation body in either the operating budget authorized for the previous year or in a separate warrant article for a previous year. Did you want me to continue, Mr. Mascola?
Please, but Mr. Sherman, I'm not sure what you want to do with the remaining as far as reading of line by line. You want to just do a brief overview of these?
Can I confer with my board?
Pardon me?
We go line by line. And do you want to start, go line by line? Yeah, or can we go by the summary page? I'm trying to get the will of my board, Mr. Maskell.
I would say recommend reading them.
I would recommend reading them line by line.
Would you read the next slide then?
Yeah, I will read it. The next slide is the actual MSDSB, which will be sent to the Department of Revenue Administration regarding the default budget. Account 1100 to 1199, regular programs, prior year adopted budget, 19,833,923. Reductions or increases? This is a reduction of 383,681 for a new default budget number of 19,450,242, with the rationale being, sorry, this is kind of hard to follow here, reduction in contractual obligations. The next line is 1,200 to 1,299 special programs, $9,800,755 was prior year adopted budget. There's an increase of $22,779 on that line. There's a decrease of a one-time appropriation of $87,151. The default budget is $9,736,383. That represents an overall contractual net reduction in contractual obligations and one-time expenditures. The next line is 1,300 to 1,399 vocational programs. The prior year adopted budget is $72,002. The default budget is $72,002. Next line, 1,400 to 1,499 other programs. Prior year adopted budget, $882,061. Default budget, $882,061. Lines 1,500 to 1,599, non-public programs, 0. Lines 1,600 to 1,699, adult and continuing education programs. Prior year adopted budget, $177,597. Default budget, $177,597. 1,700 to 1,799, community and junior college education programs, 0. 1,800 to 1,899, community service programs, 0. Instructional subtotal, this would be lines 1,100 to 1,899. Prior year adopted, $30,766,338. Reductions of $360,902. Reductions of time appropriations of $87,151. Default budget is $30,318,285. Support services, $2,000 to $21.99. Student support services, prior year adopted budget, $3,566,972. Reduction of $131,669. Default budget is $3,435,303. This represents, a net reduction / increase in contractual obligations. So there's an increase, but there's also reductions within that line. Support services, $2,200 to $2,299. Instructional staff services, $1,287,140. Increase of $8,619. One-time appropriation decrease of $4,762. Default budget, $1,290,997. Support services subtotal, $4,854,112. Reduction, $123,050. One-time appropriation reduction, $4,762. Default budget, $4,726,300. Did you want me to keep going?
If you would.
General administration, collective bargaining, 0. That is a separate warrant. 2310, 840, school board contingency, 0. 2310 to 2319, other school board, prior year adopted budget, $228,221. Default budget, $228,221. The general administration subtotal for prior year and default, that's $228,221. Executive administration, 2320, 310. SAU management services, $1,641,692, prior year adopted. Default budget is $1,641,692. For the record, that will be subject to change. The SAU has not conducted its public hearing yet. Line 2320, 2399, all under their administration, prior year adopted, 510, 216. Default budget, 510, 216. 2400 to 2499, school administration service, $3,293,402. Reduction of $86,101. Default budget, $3,207,301. 2500 to 2599, business, $55,000, prior year adopted budget. Default budget, $55,000. 2600, 2699, plant operations and maintenance, prior year adopted, $4,043,461. Reduction of $87,999. Default budget is $3,955,462. Student transportation, 2700 to 2799. $3,116,758. $3,116,758 on the default. 2800 to 2999, support service, central and other, $18,615,404 prior year adopted budget, increase of $160,963, default budget $18,776,367. Executive administration subtotal $31,275,933, reduction of $13,137, default $31,262,796. Non-instructional services, 3,100 food service operations, 3,200 enterprise operations, both lines are zero. I'll just go ahead and finish.
Thank you.
Facilities acquisition and construction. 4,100 site acquisition, prior year adopted 0, default 0. 4,200 site improvement, prior year adopted $1, default budget $1. 4,300 architectural engineering, prior year adopted 0, default 0. 4,400 educational specification development, prior year adopted 0, default 0. 4,500 building acquisition construction, prior year adopted 0, default 0. 4,600 building improvement services, prior year adopted $501,000, $500,001. One-time appropriation is a reduction of $500,000. The default budget is $1. 4,900 other facilities acquisition and construction, prior year adopted 0, default 0. Facilities acquisition and construction subtotal, prior year adopted $500,000, $2. One-time appropriation reduction of $500,000, default budget $2. Other outlays, 5110 debt service principal, $1,600,000, prior year adopted, default budget $1,600,000. 5120 debt service interest, prior year adopted $126,000, reduction of $84,000, default budget of $42,000. Other outlays subtotal $1,726,000, reduction of $84,000, default of $1,642,000. Okay, fund transfers, lines 5220 to 5221 to food service, prior year adopted $1,275,000, increase of $100,000, default budget $1,375,000. 5222, 5229 to other special revenue, prior year adopted $1,245,000, increase $132,500, default budget $1,377,500. Line 5230, 5239 to capital projects, prior year adopted a default of 0. 5251 to capital reserve, prior year adopted $250,000, $1. One-time appropriations $250,000. The default budget is $1. That's the explanation for that is that it was a ballot measure. It is by ballot. Line 5252. I'm going to read the next 6 lines. They all have 0 balances in both the prior year adopted and the default budget. 5252 to expendable trust fiduciary funds, 0. 5253 to non-expendable trust funds, 0. 5254 to agency funds, 0. 5300 to 5399 intergovernmental agency allocation, 0. 9990 supplemental appropriation, 0. 9992 deficit appropriation, 0. Funds transfer subtotal prior year adopted $2,770,001. Increases of $232,500. One-time appropriation decrease of $250,000. Default budget, $2,752,501. Total operating budget appropriations. Prior year adopted budget, $72,120,607. Reductions of $348,589,000. Reductions in one-time appropriations of $841,913. Default budget, $70,930,105.
Sue, I'm still leaning on you for default budget continued.
The next slide continues the 2019 MSDSB form that shows reasons for reductions and increases in one-time appropriations, which I believe Dr. Farrar addressed as she gave you the information. The reason we're going into this detail is we're required now by changes in the law to be specific in the line-by-line delivery at the public hearing. So we thank you for your patience as we go through that. So we'll take questions. Mr. Mescal?
At this point, I'm going to open up the floor for questions on the default budget only. And if you could please direct your questions to myself, and then I'm going to hand them over to Chairperson Sue Sherman, and she can delegate them to her board as she sees fit.
Jack Sabia, 5 Crystal Hill Road. I miss your handiwork in the neighborhood, Michael, and your Kubota. So, is it my understanding that this default budget was generated off of an original default budget, because that was our budget last year? Right? So, I guess if all one-time expenditures get taken off of the default budget, how are there one-time expenditures on last year's budget if it was the default? I mean, that's a serious, I'm not trying to be coy here.
So Jack, Mr. Safe.
Yeah, well, they're all looking at me.
No. So if you could just try and summarize the question.
Yeah, I just did. How can there be one-time expenditures on the default budget of this year that can't count, how can you have one-time expenditures on a default budget? Because you can't do it this year, and it couldn't be on the original budget.
Let me see if I can't get you that answer. Sue?
Anyone want to take that one? Give an example?
Ballot measures, things that wrong.
Ballot measures would be one.
The ballot measures, there was 500,000 put into the 4,000 lines last year, based on our interpretation of the default law as it stands now.
So is that the site improvement?
Excuse me?
Was that the line, the site improvement, which was 500,000?
Yes.
Okay, fair enough. I will say this, watching the process, going to the workshop, and I'll say this publicly, because I say it out there, is when I saw the board suggest that you go back to the budget committee and have them stay within 10% of the default budget after all their hard work and due diligence based on data on what the district truly needs. I don't believe that the budget committee's budget should be predicated off of the default budget. I see those as two separate entities,
Mr. Mescal.
and I don't think one should drive the other. This is part of the process.
Question.
Okay, so the question is, why did you do that? And Brian did go in and ask to reduce the budget by $500,000.
Okay, so Sue, you got it?
Go ahead, Kim.
Mr. Mascola, we are now discussing the default budget. We are not discussing the operating budget and the default budget together. The operating budget has been discussed. We are now discussing the default budget. I would please ask that you limit questions to the default budget. Thank you.
I'll leave that up to Mr.
And
Scola.
I'll let you do that because
That's
we
fair
had
enough, so I won't get
questions.
the answer to that. Thank you.
You can see me after.
That's be my pleasure.
Go ahead, Rob.
Rob Collins, Danvers, New Hampshire. So I sent you all an email, you probably know what I'm gonna ask for, but the new law, you correct me if I'm wrong, but the new law states, and I quote, reductions and increases to the previous year's operating budget, including identification of specific items that constitute a change by account code and the reasons for each change. I haven't seen that tonight. Do you guys have that?
Yes, we do.
It's supposed to be presented this evening.
You have a presentation of the reductions in the budgets per the MSDS by account code.
So I think you missed the word specific. It's specific items that are being removed. I didn't see that tonight. And it's supposed to be presented tonight by law. Do you not have that?
I think that's your interpretation by law, Robert.
Well, we
So
have an
what-
attorney here, maybe.
What you just, what you just received tonight was more information than that.
That's great.
So
Thank you.
So you now got that by account code.
So you don't have that information then?
You don't have that tonight. You have a state form presented that we all went to a workshop, and that is the form that we were told to present.
So, I mean, I can read you the law
No,
in full.
you have, did you pick up the packet that has the budget in it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but it doesn't have the specific items that are being removed. It just gives it gives a dollar amount, and then it gives the reason. It doesn't give the specific items. So if you want to, we can get into this.
So, Mr. Collins, you're interpreting, if I could, you're interpreting that change in the law that we would have to then say, we removed the 2 windows that were put in the Pollard School.
Correct.
You're thinking that's not how we interpreted that. That we had to be down to how many windows or,
So, for instance, in the salary line, reduction in contractual obligations is all it says, and a dollar amount. That's specific enough, is what you're saying?
we've been told that was specific.
And you don't have any more information on that?
Yes, there is more information on that, because that number reflects the number that the business administrator gave to the budget committee, and those are down to function and object code, are they not, Mr. Dowd?
Yeah. Well, I don't have that information.
Well,
It's supposed to be presented tonight.
then, I
I think this was.
We believe it was.
I'm sorry. All right, Mike, you're still, you're moderating, right?
I am.
Okay.
All right, go ahead, Dr. Farrell.
I'd like Mr. O'Shaughnessy to weigh in here. We have legal counsel. It sounds like a member of the public wants this down to function and object code, which the board does not have available right now. Is that the interpretation that we have to go down to object code?
No, I don't want the object code. I want the specific items that are being removed that it states in the RSA.
Let's do this, if we can. Can I get Attorney Jim O'Shaughnessy to, if you're willing to give your opinion on this?
Hey, Ralph.
Hey, Jim.
Board members, budget committee members. I'm not sure the statute is perfectly clear. What it does say is that, and this is a new provision, that the default budget shall be disclosed and presented for questions and discussion during this hearing. And later on, it says the governing body shall complete a default budget form created by the DRA, which is the form you just saw, demonstrating how the default budget was calculated. And it says the line item details for the changes shall be available for inspection by the voters. So the law doesn't specifically say, if I'm reading it by the plain language, that that all has to happen tonight. And that you're obligated to present that level of detail up here or in a spreadsheet tonight. It just has to be available to the voters. I think logic would suggest that you should have that available now or prior to the meeting. I'm not sure what is available. I haven't spent a lot of time reviewing it, but that's what the statute says. Does that answer the question that you're asking, Kim? And I'm not sure if that's helpful.
We presented the MSDS by line.
Yep.
We also have, I'm not sure if you picked this up, but I think it's about a 15-page default budget that breaks it out by function and by
A lot.
account code. So further breaking it out beyond the MSDS. So
It says reductions and increases to the previous year's operating budget, including identification of specific items that constitute a change. Okay, so we're interpreting what the definition of specific items and identification of specific items, that's all subject to interpretation. And, you know, this is our first go-around, and I'm certainly not gonna say you guys haven't tried to meet the spirit of the law with what you presented. You know, I think we're gonna learn as we go. That's really all I have to offer.
thank you.
All right, so at this point here, I think what we've had is a long-standing difference of interpretation of the same law. And we're probably not going to change anybody's interpretation this evening. So with that being said, Rob, do you have a different question?
I do.
Okay.
If someone else wants to step in,
You are, the microphone is yours.
very good, thank you. So within the default budget, if you go to the lines regarding transportation, obviously that's a big concern. It's almost $500,000 short of what we're contractually obligated to provide next year. I believe it's $420,000 short in the default budget. One could argue that you're obligated to transport the students. I guess you could transport them with less buses because you don't have enough money. So has there been any thought put into what the plan is? If the default goes in place, next year, you're gonna be almost $500,000 short. Are you gonna cut personnel? Are you gonna cut buses? Where's the money gonna come from?
All right, so let's pause right there. Sue, can you redirect that to get an answer?
Jen Silva will answer that one.
Well, we're gonna do our best to try and get out and really speak to our constituents and support the proposed budget that was put forth. So the hope is that we won't be in an unfortunate situation where we have to adopt a default budget as our operating budget. But unfortunately, the way the law was written and the way it was explained to several of us at many training sessions, that transportation line, as much as we might like to increase it legally, we cannot. That was not a contract that was approved by the legislative body. I think one of the beginning slides speaks to the definition of a contractual obligation.
No, and I understand that. But my concern is what would happen if the default occurs?
We'll have to cross that bridge when we get to it, and let's hope that we're
Was
not
there
put in
any-
that position.
Was there any thought of putting the transportation contract on the ballot as it's now required, so that it could be approved?
And then no means no.
Not with
Dr. Barrett?
transportation.
Yes, with transportation.
There is no
That's
requirement.
the legal advice that we were given. Yes, with transportation.
A judge is not gonna tell you you can't transport
Right,
the
so-
kids.
No, we will have to transport them and find the money within the budget that we have.
You wouldn't be able to, no means no. You
Listen,
wouldn't be
hold
able to
on,
fund it.
everybody pause
Not
for a
the
minute.
increase.
Pause for a minute. So I'd like the questions to be specific, direct them over here, and so this way we're not engaging in just a looser discussion between the communities. So, Mr. Collins, if you have another question, just, you can kind of focus it, and I'll try and get you the best.
Yeah, I'd like to follow up on those, but if Mr. Safety wants to ask.
Mr. Sapia can wait.
Okay.
Sorry.
I'm used to a Play-Doh.
Okay, so it sounds like you haven't put any thought into what the plan would be for transportation. So the next question I have is, is there, my understanding is there's some gray area around this, in that there is the Articles of Agreement with Timberlane specify transporting K through 12. Is there any leeway there that the board could adjust the contract, the funding for the contract? I'm just wondering.
Sue?
Again, this is our first time with this change in the default law, that we're not able to show those increases. So we've been given advice to, as you said, put it on the warrant. That's not necessarily our first choice because we agree with no means no. Adding money in and hoping that we've done it legally, we're trying to follow our obligation by the law.
But if no means no, then the next contract that comes up, you have to put it on the ballot, right?
No.
Or you would just be continually underfunding the transportation line and gutting other areas of the budget.
I'm going to let Dr. Metzler have a turn.
Great, thank you. We've looked into this quite a bit. You know, we talked to our attorney, Shaughnessy. We got a second written legal opinion today encouraging us to put $421,000 in the default budget. That legal opinion has been forwarded to the chair and vice chair, and I know they can adjust the default budget up until a certain point, so we'll have an opportunity to review that new information. I have concerns also. We have a citizen's petition, and no means no. We will not be able to transfer money into the transportation line from the operating budget in the event that the default budget is adopted. So we have some complicated obstacles to negotiate here, but the board will have additional information to deliberate over, and hopefully they'll take those legal opinions into consideration, and they'll have the opportunity to adjust the default budget if they so choose.
I mean, at the very least, you could put the money there, and then, in good faith, and then if someone wants to challenge that, they can't, right? So, I think
This
it
is
would
what
be
I'd like to do. Can we
in the best interest of everyone if you did that.
Mr. Collins, hold up a minute. So I want the school board to present their default budget, and I do want to hear from the residents. But the school board is going to continue to have meetings, and they still have opportunities to make any adjustments that they feel necessary on the default budget. So this conversation could be better utilized at a school board meeting. Really what I want to do is I want to have the school board present their default budget, read the overview of how they got there, but if there's small discrepancies or differences of opinions, I think that would be better held at a school board meeting.
If I could just add, I think it's important in the best interest of the district, as Ms. Selva just stated, that people know, because of this public hearing, that if they don't vote for the proposed budget, transportation costs will be short almost $500,000, correct? So people should vote for the proposed budget, correct?
Well, for many reasons, I hope people vote for the proposed
That's
budget.
one, sure.
Okay,
But
hold on.
that's an important point for people to understand.
That point is noted. Here's what I do. I want to give Mr. Sapia a chance to speak. He's been waiting patiently.
Which I so really do. Julie, did I say you look marvelous this evening? So I just want some clarification on the transportation. Do we and did we enter into a 2-year contract or into a contract with the bus company?
Hold on right there. Sue, can you answer that, or Dr. Metzler?
Dr. Metzler will answer that.
Yes, we entered into a multi-year
Okay.
contract with our transportation providers.
And that is a contract. There was an offer, there was an acceptance, there was a contract that was signed, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
You
So.
have a witness here?
No, I'm trying to be concise with you.
Okay, go ahead.
So we're obligated under RSA, when developing a default budget, all contractual agreements.
What complicates this is our articles of agreement. So we have articles of agreement which we, and obviously we signed a contract that has increases that are contractual obligations. The law has changed in terms of default budget, but our articles of agreement have not changed. So we have these contractual obligations. I think as far as a legal opinion would go, does the board have that kind of discrepancy, that discretion to fund this appropriately?
Thank you.
I think what complicates this more, if the operation budget fails and warrant article number 10 fails, we will not be able to transfer money into the transportation line.
I
No will
understand.
be no, we will be short 421,000, maybe more, in transportation, which will create, it's not a bridge that we can try to cross once we get there, it's something we need to prepare for it now.
I'm with you so far. So, to tail on what Mr. Collins said, it's a contract, put it in there, so it doesn't mislead the public, and in case they go to the default, it is properly funded. I don't see anybody, I don't see DRA or anyone holding it against us to transport, to have those funds in there to transport our children from their homes to the school and back. And if you're gonna take,
Nor do I. I think, I talked a little bit, our contracts moving forward, my hope would be, I would want to put language in our contracts, in the event our operational budget does not pass, you will not get the increase in the contract. We don't have that in this contract, but I think moving forward, we need to let the vendors know that you will not get the increases in the contract unless our operational budget passes.
Mr. Sapia, hold on for 1 second. I want to use the same comment I made earlier. It's a great point. I think what we have here is a conversation that might be better suited. in a school
I don't disagree.
Pardon me?
My last comment to this is, that was the last time I came up to the mic and asked that, maybe intrusive question, was because one thing kind of feeds off the other. It kind of grows exponentially. You want to be driven by the data. Thank you.
You're welcome. Mr. Collinger, another question?
Yeah, I have several more, if you don't mind. Group insurance, and I'd like Mr. Dowd to weigh in on this possibly, but if I'm calculating things correctly, the group insurance, which we're contractually bound to provide to our staff, was increased in the default budget, but it was only increased 4.6%. The guaranteed maximum rate, I believe, is 6.5% from the insurance company. So the default budget does not cover who we're currently giving insurance to if the insurance premiums come in at the guaranteed maximum rate. So maybe Mr. Dowd could comment on that, how comfortable he is with that. Maybe the board could explain why they're short in the group insurance line.
I think that, I haven't calculated the difference. If you're estimating it's 4.5%, correct, our costs have gone up 6.5% by the guaranteed maximum rate. We did have some cuts in staffing that resulted in some reductions, I can get you that number, in insurance, which I think will carry forward. Those 14 positions, they weren't all utilizing insurance. So, in a second, I can get you that information, but we did have a portion of that that would be a reduction. I can get you that number, but I don't think that it was that much.
So you're saying that the group insurance line is covered 6.5%?
No, I've budgeted in the operating budget higher than what we have in the default budget. The positions that were cut resulted in a health reduction of 146,400. So if you were to take the prior year amount, reduce it by 146,000, and carry that forward with the 6.5% GMR, that would probably be a fair estimate as to what our obligation would be. Notwithstanding that, we do have room or need room every year for changes in coverage, employees.
Where is the default number compared to that adjusted number? Do you know?
I believe at the 2,900 level.
No, I mean, is the adjusted number comparable to the number in the default budget?
Oh. Well, 9,888,000 is in the proposed default budget.
Right.
And I am up, I'm at 10,240,000 in the operating budget.
So it's $500,000 short of your estimate.
Approximately 400,000.
And I understand this kind of a squishy number, right? Because you don't know who's gonna take what plan.
Exactly.
Family, individual. The staffing next year is gonna be different than this year. But routinely, year over year, we've estimated that number with a formula, I believe, out of the business administrator's office. And that's what you presented. And so I guess the question is for the board, why are you cutting that number of $500,000?
Kim, you want to take that?
Sue, you want to delegate that one?
Sure.
Kim's going to
When we look at the expended for that line, 2017-18, we expended $8,792,082. The default budget is $9,888,000. We're up $1.1 million over that line. From last year, we've had a reduction of 14 staff. The proposed budget has less salaries in it than the default budget. That's the rationale for that.
Do you know the 14 people that left, if they had insurance or not?
Okay,
We do,
hold on.
we do, excuse me.
Everybody take a break. Here's what I want to do. We're getting back into too much detail here. This is information. What I'd like you to do is state your questions if they can be simpler to the point and get an answer. But if we want to get down to like which employees had it or did they have insurance, I don't believe this is the forum to get those answers. I would take these questions to a school board meeting and bring them up there.
Sure. So if I could ask, what was the GMR, or what was the increase in premiums this year? Because you're looking at 17-18 to get the default number. But we're talking 2 years from 17-18, which includes a 6.5% GMR for next year, as well as the increase in premiums for this year that you have to bake into that number. So what was the increase in premiums for this year? Do we know?
Is anybody prepared with those numbers?
I'm not prepared for that.
I believe it'd be about 5%. I don't have an exact number.
So 5%
Nancy here?
on $9 million is $450,000, right? And then another 6.5% on top of that is another $1 million. So you're saying that that's how you came to that number?
No, that's not what I said.
Okay.
I make a motion to move on to Article 3, Capital Reserve Fund.
Mr. Bevo.
I have a question.
Let me back up. So Mr. O'Neill's got a motion.
Second.
Do I see a second?
Wait a minute. This is a budget committee meeting?
This is a budget committee
And
meeting.
how did Mr. O'Neill make a motion? You can't make a motion in a budget committee meeting. Ridiculous.
We're talking about the default budget, which is a school budget item.
It's not a
Yeah,
school
but
board
let me just
meeting?
back up. So it's a budget committee meeting and we're presenting. So I'm going to retract that. So Mr. O'Neill, hold off right now. And Mr. Sherman, hold off for a second. I'm going to ask everybody to hold off. I really want to look at, and I stated in the beginning under the ground rules where if I feel like we're not going down the right path, I'm going to limit discussion so we can keep this meeting moving forward. I'm hearing a lot of discussion, good questions, but they're really at the wrong venue. We should be, what we're doing is we're doing a public hearing. You're hearing the proposed budget, you're hearing the default budget. If you have questions, I would suggest really going to each board's meetings to bring up those questions and that level of detail.
I think this is the place to ask those questions, Michael, respectively. This is where we're supposed to be asking about the default budget.
I agree. This is a preview. This is a preview to what's coming forward.
This is the presentation of the default budget to the public.
It is, but we also have a deliberative session where you can ask additional questions and have more of a discussion. This is a hearing where you're listening to what is being presented. There is questions and answers, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Belo.
I haven't asked a question yet, so just, indulge me on one quick one. So, Dr. Farah mentioned earlier that numbers that went into the default budget were given.
Can you grab the microphone closer?
Sorry. Dr. Farah mentioned earlier that numbers that went into the default budget were provided by Jeff Dowd here, and I just wanted to ask Mr. Dowd if he agrees with the way, with how those numbers were used in the default budget that was presented tonight.
Well, I will, if I may, the school board did reduce the number of positions, and those positions were removed from the 1100, 1200, 2100, just for the record, the 2400 series of accounts, and from the 2600 series of accounts. And so there are a number of changes in here that I very much agree with. I'm obviously not comfortable with the situation with transportation. I do believe that the voters, in passing and voting for the Articles of Agreement, did vote that obligation. That's an obligation of the district. That's a lot of money to be out, but it would be good to see some money in building or site improvements as well. And I think that those are the two big areas. We've had an issue with the Department of Revenue Administration in the past, trying to reallocate, and as you know, we're committed to our capital and operating appropriated funds tied to those expenditures through our Articles of Agreements. We've had some issues in the past trying to shift those in the from what was voted. So if we have a repair come up, I'm not 100% comfortable with the Department of Revenue Administration. It's going to allow us to shift funds into those lines at the end of the day. And I think in my final default budget, I proposed simply 100,000 in that 4,600 account to allow for emergency septic or we've had a number of fire panels go, and otherwise, if we can't get the Department of Revenue Administration to allow us to allocate funds where we need them, we could be in a little bit of a bind. But
Mr. Jones, did that answer your question? I'm sorry.
Peter's question.
Peter, did that answer your question?
For the most part, I just want to make a comment just based on what Jeff said. During a recent budget committee meeting, Mr. Dowd was presented us with a document that showed his calculated default budget of $71,816,430, which is about $900,000 higher than what the school board presented as a default budget. These reports are public documents. If anybody would like a copy of what Mr. Dowd presented, I do have copies available.
Hold on one second, Mr. Collins.
Thank you.
Mr. Sapien, I'm just going to share the microphone both sides.
And I apologize, I may have already asked this question, but on that sight line of $500,000, it's my understanding is that you have to, what has to go into the default budget is anything that was appropriated in last year's budget, correct? And the $500,000 was appropriated, and now, Kim, I forget the reason why you gave me why you took that out, but you couldn't go in and do half of that.
Mr. Sapien, could you do me a favor? State the question.
Well, that was the question. Can you adjust that $500,000 sight line, which you took out, was one question. The other question was.
Let's get the answer to the first one.
Okay.
Sue?
I'm not sure I even understand the question, so.
Jack, one more time.
Okay.
One question,
Right.
condense it.
So you,
One question.
$500,000 was appropriated on the default budget on that sight line, which you took out.
No, let's be clear, the school board moved $500,000 into the 4,600 last year when they adjusted for the MS-22 before September 1st. So we have some questions. Timberlane's very unique, and so when we ask the DRA questions, they give you an answer that they would give every district, but they were really not aware of the way we raise money. We raise money differently than others. We raise our operating money different than capital. So we've been asking that question. I know the school board wanted us to get that answer, and they're telling us that they were really unclear. They said ask the DOE, and you know what the DOE is going to tell me to do? Ask the DRA. We're going to go back and forth. We're under the impression that we can't move money into 4,200, 4,600 after the vote that was raised for operating and making it capital. Now, there's some talk out that there's case law, but I don't see it. I see case law as you certainly can make budget transfers, but we can't override our Articles of Agreement about how we raise money in terms of capital and operating and change the purpose of the money.
I understand.
So last year the school board moved money into those lines, and we were
Okay, so what I saw on the default budget was $500,000, and then it was taken out. Right? Am I looking at that right?
You didn't have money there. We moved money
You
from
moved money
the
there, okay.
It was in the default.
It was in the default. The school board did move money in to that line prior to the final vote on the default, and I think it was moved into that line in order that we have.
So the fact that it was in the line
They adopted.
and then voted on,
They adopt the budget and then they changed the
Then they
lines
did it
and
after.
made it a school board budget. It was a default budget that became the school board budget.
That's There was $500,000 in the default budget last year.
There was.
And-
Hold, wait,
and
Mr.
40
Collins, Mr. Collins, hold on for a
600.
minute. I want to get Mr. Sapia's answer.
well, yes, and my question was, because it was in the default budget last year, it was an appropriation, it was an amount that was appropriated, so shouldn't it be in there again this year? I think, Kim, you gave me a reason why not. My question, I guess, is, could you do half of that without circumventing the rules? You've taken out $500,000.
The school board has directed us to get some answers about what we can and can't do.
Okay.
And then they'll deliberate and they'll make the decisions, I think, moving forward about, once they have concrete answers about what they can and can't do, in terms of transferring money. I think once we have real answers to that.
I just saw it in there, I saw it taken out, and I thought that was a legitimate question.
Hold on, you all set there, Mr. Sapia?
Yeah, I'm all set, thank you, Mike.
Okay.
Mike, Sue?
Sue, go ahead.
I'd like to make a comment about what I believe the public hearing should be, in my experience. It's an opportunity for our public, our communities, to hear proposed budget, and because we have a law in place, the default situation. And I'm hoping that both boards, hearing comments from the public, would be helped in their deliberations as we go forward into these last few weeks before deliberative and before the warrant is finalized. That's what I believe a public hearing. It's to hear and receive comments from the public that may educate our boards about how the public feels about something. So I do appreciate you guys being here tonight. This is a lot of work to prepare this default. As much as it was painful, this board, this school board, was involved in the default with Mr. Dowd going forward. We made a goal we would do it together. We don't always agree on the numbers, but we have worked to the best of our ability to come up with those numbers. I have concerns about that transportation as well. But the law leads us to believe we cannot put that number in. And I have concerns about that, as well as 4,600 and 4,200, the facilities. But
Right.
we're here tonight to hear and be heard. Thank you, Mr. Maskell.
So here's what I'd like to do. Mr. Collins, do you have additional questions about how many?
Maybe one or two.
Are they specific in detail into the default budget?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Michael, it's a question that was asked earlier, we have the answer.
Okay.
It's a clarification. The increase, the GMR from the previous year was 5.8%.
Okay.
And then this year it's 6.5%.
Okay, so it is short, just considering those increases.
All right. Excuse me. Mike, you know what? I've heard about enough of this nonsense. Thank you, Sue. It's not short, okay? You've
Mr.
got
Boyle.
this place,
Mr. Boyle, hold on. Let's-
well, this is
respect.
getting lit out of control.
Okay, but it's respect. We can
I'll
say
give him
it
some
different.
respect. Once you've got a little respect for people in the front of the room.
Okay.
You've got, this place ran on $69 million last week, okay? We now
I got it.
have 70.9 with reduced positions. There's plenty of money to run Timberlane next year. But we can sit back and play a little game, and this is how the voters got hurt last year.
All right.
We want to come up and play games with the default instead of proposed.
Mr. Collins, just give me, right here, what is the nature of your next question, as short as you can make it?
So it's to the 4,600 line.
Okay, and what is the question after that?
So I have deep concerns about that because we have pressing needs in the district with our infrastructure. So as an example, this past year, there was a septic field that had to be addressed.
Right.
There's mitigation of asbestos that happens routinely in schools. It's in the floors. If it's disrupted, it needs to be addressed. Doors get broken. Locks get broken.
No, I got it. So it's facilities and what is?
Facilities and safety which this board is supposed to be watching
Okay.
after our kids.
So, enough, hold on.
And
Hold on,
health.
speak. Hold
So,
on.
can I ask a question?
I just want to hear the nature of the questions.
The nature of the question is around that.
Yeah, I understand, hold on. Sue Sherman, go ahead.
We're supporting the proposed budget.
Great.
Can you repeat
That-
that, Sue? What did you say?
We are supporting the proposed budget.
Have you voted on that yet?
No?
So how do you know?
I want the questions directed over here.
Sure.
So
Can
I
I ask
can
the
make sure
question?
we flow along.
So my question is, how is the board, if they can't move money, or if they know they have to move money into these capital lines, why don't you just do it now? Why are you waiting until later to try to finagle things with DRA and DOE if you know there are needs in the capital lines? They're not one-time expenses.
Some of them are.
Repairs are not one-time expenses. They happen all the time. I'll go back to what Mr. Stokinger used to say. Is every drop of oil a one-time expense? It's an extreme example given, but is every book that you buy a one-time expense? No, it's not. The buildings need repairs, you need to maintain them, there's safety issues, you need to keep the doors locked, the kids safe, the rooms warm. There were furnace issues recently.
We're committed to keeping our kids safe. We're
Okay,
committed
so
to
then
keeping our kids.
if you're
Hold
committed-
on, everybody, hold on.
If you're committed, then
Mr.
why-
Collins, hold on.
I'm asking the
please.
question, why are
Hold
they
on.
not putting money in the
We are
capital
not
lines?
making any progress here. We are not making any progress. You're gonna
Answer
have
the
your-
question.
Hold on, we're making no
We're
progress.
supporting.
So I'm going to hold off on
There is money
answering
in the
those
budget for
questions.
heat.
Mr. Seyfried, you have
Not
a
heat,
different.
furnace.
Hold on, please, stop. Mr. Seyfried, you have a
Repairs.
different question.
Yes,
Go ahead.
thank you. It is true that we operated on 69 million last year. If the administration had been given 35 million, they
Mr.
would.
Seyfried, the question.
Point of order, why does it have to come in the form of a question?
Yeah.
Is it Jeopardy?
I'm gonna get to
I'm
the
not trying to be
que-
flip.
We're
but-
trying to get answers.
I understand, but it's a public
You
hearing.
didn't answer
I
my
think-
last question.
Point of order, I think people should be able to make a statement. My understanding of the rules is that's within their rights.
Mhm.
Am I incorrect?
You're not correct. I'm just
You-
trying to get more of a focus, because
I-
I'm sure you
I
have
appreciate
a
that.
question.
Mike, I promise you, I know you know I'm an unfocused guy, but I promise, I'll try and be focused.
Go ahead.
If the administration was given 35 million, they would have ran on 35 million. But on 69 million, the roof's leaked, the track doesn't work, the board did nothing to do to bring that forward to the budget committee, and I'm appalled at some of the conditions, and then I'm even more appalled at the attitude that certain board members take towards citizens in this community that are taking their time here tonight to watch out for the safety and welfare of their children. And God forbid, we lose a kid because some facility thing was put off for level funding.
Thank you, Mr. Sapien. Phil?
What was the question, though?
Point of clarification, it does not need to come in a form of a question, correct? People are allowed, they're permitted to make a statement and express their opinion?
Yes.
Okay. To that length, if I may, I think everyone here cares about the children's safety and no one is looking to put the students in harm's way. But it's important that, well, in my opinion, one of the things that concerns me with the default budget is that it represents, it's 1.3% lower than last year's budget. So that's that would be a big change. Conversely, I know this isn't about the proposed budget, but they sort of relate to each other. The proposed budget is also a cut. The proposed budget, if passed, is 0.19% lower than last year's budget. The debate here is whether we slash the budget or cut the budget.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Collins, I didn't get back to you, so I just want to be careful. My goal is to get your questions answered, but at the same time, move the meeting forward.
Sure.
And I'm not sure, with the level of detail and just a difference
I'll
of
be real
opinion.
concise. If the board knows they have to move money into the capital lines, why are they not doing it now, and why are they trying to do it later?
Hold on right there. Sue, can you pass that question off to your board? If they know that they need to move the money, why are they not doing it now versus later?
So I'm gonna let Brian and Kim speak to that.
real simple, because you can't. When the default budget passes, if that's what the voters choose, then, according to the Hampton case, then it becomes a bottom line. And then the school board can move monies around after the default budget passes. We cannot do that in advance. Whether you want to move money around for transportation, you can do all kinds of things. But we are hoping that the proposed budget passes. If the default budget passes, we'll have to deal with it.
Okay,
And that's all.
hold on.
Could I
Mr.
just
Collins, did that
make a
answer your
comment?
question?
No, because the voted budget had $500,000 in the 4,600 line. You are moving the money. You're cutting it $500,000. I want to know why you're doing that. They're not all one-time expenses. They are not. And I'm wondering why, if you know money has to be in there, why you're not doing it now.
Hold on. Is that Mr. O'Neill with your hand up? Dr. Farrer.
There's $500,000 in there for capital expenses right now. Mr. Dow, do you have any idea of what that $500,000 is being used for?
I believe the board transferred some of that funding out to other capital lines, including the 4,200 line. And we have a number of projects going on at the moment, some studies, and I know over the past several years we've had obviously a potential septic issue, I don't want to say a failure, it's a very strong way to put it. We've had some potentially expensive septic repairs, and we've also had fire panels fail. And I think Tom could tell me, over the past 3 years, I think we've had three building fire panels fail. So those are the types of things that where we didn't have a necessarily directed budget, we at least have the funding to cover some of those repairs as they come in.
And if I could, to be clear, if the proposed doesn't pass, there's zero money in the capital lines. So that because of the way we raise money in this district, moving money from the operating budget to the capital budget is not warranted. It's never been done before, it shouldn't be done.
Mr. Collins, hold on. So I see a bunch of hands. Sue, you want to?
I'm gonna let Jen speak.
I think we already said that we're looking to have those questions answered. So I don't think anybody here is going to answer that for you tonight. We've asked for some direction, and we're waiting to have those questions answered.
Who's got their hand up? Mr. O'Neill?
One of the things is, how did we get here? One of the comments that was made tonight was about the student transportation. Part of the new RSAs relative to the default budget has to have the legislative body ratify the decision-making of entering in the contract. With us going through a default budget, that was not taking place last year, which was the first year of the contract, and therefore, the money for the increase coming into this year in the default budget was not allowed to be put in there by state RSA. Now you go back and you look at where were we last year. The spread between the operating budget and the default budget was a lot less until somebody got into the deliberative floor of the deliberative session, increased it to well over close to $1 million increase, and basically sealed its defeat from possibly the jaws of victory. And that's how we got here.
Mr. Collins, another question?
Yeah, so given what we've just talked about, $500,000 short with health insurance, $500,000 short with transportation in the default budget. I would like to ask Dr. Metzler or Mr. Dowd what they would have to do, what they would suggest, what they would recommend to the school board to overcome those issues if the proposed budget didn't pass.
Point of order.
I'm going to let Dr. Metzler or Mr. Dowd answer that question.
Well, obviously, when there are challenges, there are opportunities. I mean, I'm not prepared. I mean, I've taken a look at what these two numbers look like. To Mr. Boyle's point, when I look at a bottom line, you know, when there is some flexibility, the bottom line doesn't scare me as much as some of the lines that we may or may not be able to move money into. There are challenges, but I think, you know, whatever resources you provide us, you know, you have our word, we're gonna do the very best we can to be as efficient and effective. Yeah, those are challenges, and I really don't have answers. I mean, those are things I'd have to work out, I think, with the school board moving forward. I think as a school board, we're making a school board budget. This default number scares me a little bit. I too am hoping that the proposed budget passes for a lot of the reasons we discussed tonight, but I don't think we're at a point where I could really tell you what those numbers would mean.
Sure.
That's
Okay,
fair.
let's do this, hold on. So he doesn't have a specific answer, and many of your good questions are requiring a lot of detail that we're not prepared to give tonight.
Sure.
Okay.
So one last comment, if I could. It's a great segue. Given all this information, I'm asking the board to please go back, relook at the default budget, and properly fund the lines that need to be funded. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Thank you, Mr. Savior, for both of your great comments and concerns. Does anybody else have any comments on the default budget? Okay. I don't see any others, so I'm going to close the discussion on the default and move now to the next slide of revenue. Mr. Below there? Who's got it? I'm not going to read this one verbatim, but I do want to focus on the very last three rows, primarily the two most right columns. So it's the columns of 2018-19 budget and the 2019-20 proposed. And so what we're looking at is basically a few numbers here. I'm looking at the total income for the 18-19 year was $17.851 million. And in the proposed budget, we're ballparking about $16.725 million. That's a reduction of about $1.125 million. The district assessment is what our towns are going to use to generate some revenue off of our property values. Again, the 18-19 budget, $54 million. Going forward to the proposed, $55 million. That's an increase of about $1 million. And the very last line, you're going to see the difference between the 18-19 budget and the 19-20 proposed, 71.8 versus 71.7. It's a difference of about 137. So the difference might not look like a huge number, but the way it's apportioned is where you want to focus your interest on those numbers. It's where the revenue is coming from. That's what I want to show you on that slide. Are there any comments on the revenue page? Okay. I don't see any. I'm going to move to Article 3. And I'm going to ask Sue if she could have somebody from her board read Article 3.
I'd be happy to read it. Article 3, Capital Reserve Fund. Shall the voters of the Tim Lane Regional School District raise and appropriate up to $250,000 to be placed in the school building construction, reconstruction, capital improvement, and land purchase capital reserve fund established in 1996, with such amount to be transferred from those funds in the June 30th, 2019 unassigned fund balance available for transfer on July 1 of this year, which was apportioned as capital expenses in the 2018-2019 year in accordance with Article 6 of the Tim Lane Regional School District Articles of Agreement, no amount to be raised by taxation, majority vote required. This is a standard article we've had on for the last few years.
Are there any questions on Article 3? I don't see any. We'll go for Article 4. So I'm going to ask you if you can again assign somebody from your board to read 4.
Mr. Boyle's going to address.
Article 4, Performing Arts Center, outer wall replacement. Shall the voters of the Tim Lane Regional School District raise and appropriate the sum of $500,000 to repair the outside wall of the Timberlane Performing Arts Center and to authorize the district to withdraw the sum of $500,000 from the existing school building construction, reconstruction, capital improvements, and land purchase capital reserve fund. No amount to be raised by additional taxation, majority vote required. I would ask if our business operations coordinator, Mr. Tom Gary, could come up and update us. Tom is our facilities expert here, and he and I had some chat, so I think he can enlighten the public of what's going on here.
Thank you for having me. Is the microphone on?
Yep. Yeah, so as Mr. Boyle indicated, him and I chatted today. I also prepared some notes to go along with this. So as I've made the board aware, there is an issue of the siding on the Performing Arts Center that has deteriorated beyond just a routine maintenance repair. Back last month of December, the school board approved us hiring an architectural firm to assist us with the construction documents. So we're in the process of doing so. So at the next school board meeting, the architect will be alongside me and will be doing a full presentation as the board requested with further details. So happy to answer any questions specific to the project.
Phil.
I wasn't there for the tour. Can you quickly summarize the problem beyond just sort of the siding is beyond normal repair?
Sure. So I guess the skin of the building, and the majority of the skin, is a cement fiber siding board. That product has since been removed from the market from that specific manufacturer. So we don't have any warranty recourse with them. And going forward, it would be in the district's best interest to look at an alternative material. The cement fiberboard just deteriorates, it delaminates. We've had sections of the building that have lost pieces of it, which have fallen off of the building, which pose a safety risk to all the occupants on the property.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to ask you to, so you said there's no warranty, remaining warranty, there's no place to go back to. What can you tell the community as far as going forward, if this passes, what kind of assurance they have with a new warranty on a new product, and again, any type of assurance?
Sure. I mean, I think that enlisting the help of an architect to look at the details of the building and specify a product that is going to last 25 plus years with very low maintenance, that's our intent with the replacement product.
Thank you.
Todd, correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, but that material is also used in other places throughout the district, is that correct?
That is correct. We have the cement board on the high school, the middle school, and various buildings throughout the district.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions for Mr. Geary? David Gerns.
Yes, when I took the tour, we talked about this material that you're currently using for siding. And as I understood it, there was a risk of water seeping behind it and therefore creating additional damage to the structure. Did I understand that correctly?
That's correct. With any building envelope, any infiltration of water and air isn't good for the rest of the building. And so you run a risk of damage to the substructure, you run a risk of damaging contents inside, you run the risk of mold or microbial growth inside. So these are all items that we want to try to avoid by replacing the system.
Thank you. We got two more down there. Is that Jen?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to make a comment more just as a taxpayer and a member of the public. I come to this building often, and walking up to it, it's always impressive, and it's definitely one of the finer buildings that we have in this district. I did go on the tour, and I was very surprised and disappointed in what I saw when I walked around the side and the back of the building. And I don't know if the public realizes what condition this is in what it actually looks like when we're talking about replacing that pack wall and why it's so important. Because I know when you walk in from the front, it's not obvious. But I do think this is an important warrant article.
Okay, go ahead. Yes.
Tom, you'll have an actual number for us with the next school board meeting, correct?
Yeah, what I've actually done too is, as I indicated to Brian, is I've taken that 500,000 that the school board has earmarked, and I've forwarded that along to the architect. Right, so an architect has to have a basis for design. We use that 500,000, say, we gotta stay within that budget for now. So we will have a close budget, without hard bid, without a hard bid. But I will have a worksheet for you, that outlines some of the costs. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Geary regarding the outer wall? Okay. I don't see any, so thank you, Mr. Geary. Our next one is Article 5, 3-year collective bargaining agreement for the Timberlane Teachers Association, and I believe Sarah, you're going to take this one?
Yep, thank you. Article 5, 3-year collective bargaining agreement, Timberlane Teachers Association. Shall the voters of the Timberlane Regional School District approve the cost items included in the collective bargaining agreement reached between the Timberlane Teachers Association and the Timberlane Regional School Board, which calls for the following increases in salaries and benefits at the current staffing levels over the amount paid in the prior fiscal year. Fiscal year 2019 to 2020, estimated increase $866,343. Fiscal year 2020 to 2021, estimated increase $851,967. Fiscal year 2021 to 22, estimated increase $901,897. 3-year total, $2,620,207. And further to raise and appropriate the sum of $866,343 for the 2019-2020 fiscal year, such sum representing the additional costs attributable to the increase in salaries and benefits required by the new agreement over those that would be paid at the current staffing levels. Majority vote required. The intent of this article will follow the school district, will allow the school district to enter into a successor 3-year contract with the Timberlane Teachers Association. The proposed contract ratified by the union and the school board represents a 3.07% increase in salaries for year 1, a 2.92% increase in salaries in year 2, and a 3.02% increase in salaries in year 3. So this next slide, the summary of the changes. So the salary schedule, in year 1, all steps 1 through 15, there will be a 0% increase in that salary schedule. In year 2, 2020 to 2021, there'll be a 0.75% increase to the step schedule. In 2021 to 22, there will be a 1% increase. There's also been changes to the longevity payment. In year 1, members who've completed 15 years of service, the longevity payment increases from $100 per year to $150. In year 2, there is no change, and the longevity payment stays at $150 per year. In year 3, members who've completed 15 years of service, the longevity payment increases from $150 per year to $175. Additional summary of the salary schedule changes. Again, in year 1, there's that 0% added to the step schedule. Current step 1 and new members without experience will be placed on step 3. Current members advance 1 step and advance a 2nd step midway through the year on February 1st with a max step of 15. No additional steps will be added to the salary schedule. Just to speak to this very quickly, this is just to address a missed step from a number of years ago when there was no contract. So this is just to correct the step and get everybody back in place. It is also designed to increase our starting salary to make it a little bit more competitive for those new members that are to attract new talent, and make us a little bit more competitive to our neighboring districts. In year 2, 2020 to 2021, 0.755% has been added to each step of the salary schedule as mentioned before. Current members will advance 1 step with a max step of 15. No additional steps to be added to the salary schedule. Year 3, 2021 to 22, that 1% is added to each step in the salary schedule. Again, current members advance 1 step with a max step of 15, and no additional steps will be added to the salary schedule. Additional changes to the agreement will now include part-time members, clarifies that only members working more than 50% are entitled to benefits. Language updates were made to the maternity leave policy and the reduction in force process, and added language for just cause to the discipline grievance process with the exclusion of non-renewals and termination.
Thank you.
Yep.
Does anybody have any questions regarding article number 5? Mr. Bealow.
Okay, just a quick question. When will the proposed contract be available to the public for review? Or at least the change in language?
I'm waiting for our attorney to connect with the TTA, see if that was gonna be possible.
Hold on. Mr. O'Neill, you had a question?
Yeah, we actually, as a board, we took a vote to actually create a red line. And
Yeah, I'll respond. So I have received a copy from the TTA. They actually took the time to initiate and do that themselves. They've sent it to me. I'm in the process of reviewing that. And so basically, as soon as I get it done and we get on the same page with the TTA, it'll be available for the public to review. So,
could you give us an estimate when that would be done, though?
next week. It's just a matter of me spending a couple hours and going back and forth a little bit with the membership, with the leadership at TTA. So, a couple days.
So we should have it well before the deliberative.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay.
Paul Boyd, Danville, New Hampshire. Just God forbid it doesn't pass, what happens?
Go ahead, Sue.
That this contract doesn't pass?
Correct.
Then the teachers would be without a contract and the pay stays at what they're currently being paid.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, sir?
Yes.
Can you just, for clarification, I'm not sure if it was picked up on the microphone, can you just state your name and the town again?
Paul Boyd, Danville.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Are there any other questions regarding Article 5, the teacher contract? I don't see. Oh, Sarah?
Isn't there usually an article for a special meeting to renegotiate if it doesn't pass? Or no?
I missed your question.
I'm sorry. Is there usually, if the teacher's contract doesn't pass, is there usually a separate article to allow us to go into a negotiation, special case negotiation, or no? I may be remembering this incorrectly, but
I'm not sure.
I'm
I'm
sorry.
going to defer this one to Dr. Metzler, Sue Sherman, attorney. Or the attorney.
The board does have the option to add an article that allows it without having to go to court to conduct one special meeting after renegotiating a different agreement. So you have the option, board, putting that on there or not. This time you haven't elected to.
Is it too late at this point?
I don't think so. We haven't. No, you haven't finalized the warrant. This is just a draft warrant, so.
Is it?
I thought we had an article.
Is it in the language?
Mr. Boyle.
Isn't this what that language means? That the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with the RSA's 40, 13?
Is there or not? Is that on there? I don't know.
That's on the warrant.
Okay, sorry.
There you go.
That's under
It's
the
all right.
I apologize.
I thought we had one.
Okay. Are there additional questions on Article 5? I don't see any. So I'm going to close discussion on Article 5. We'll move to Article 6. charges for professional banking, and I'm gonna actually ask Mr. Lee Doobie, if you'd want to read this one.
Did you speak to me? Are you speaking to us?
Is Lee there? I was just gonna have Lee read this one.
I'm sorry?
Can you please read Article 6?
Sure. Article 6, charges for professional banking or brokerage assistance for reserve funds and trust funds, non-contingent. Shall the voters of the Timberlane Regional School District vote pursuant to RSA 35:9-A, Part 3, which became effective July 26, 2014, to authorize the trustees of the trust funds without further action of the school district meeting to charge any expenses incurred for professional banking or brokerage assistance for trust funds and reserve funds in their custody as authorized in RSA Chapter 35 and RSA 198:20-C Part 2 against the funds involved. Such authority to remain in effect until rescinded by a vote of the school district meeting, which said vote to rescind such authority shall not occur within 5 years of the adoption of this article. Majority vote required.
Anybody have questions on Article 6? I don't see any. So I'm going to close Article 6. Article 7, change trustee of trust funds. Sorry, so I got ahead of myself. So if you want to select another member of your board to read Article 7.
Mrs. Lowe's, would you do note Article 7?
Article 7, change trustees of trust funds, non-contingent. Shall the voters of the Timberlane Regional School District vote pursuant to RSA 198:20-C2, trust funds, and RSA 35:2, reserve funds, to elect the trustees of the trust funds of the town of Clarkstown, New Hampshire, to take custody of all school district established trust funds and reserve funds on January 1st, 2019, and to administer such funds on behalf of the school district under the provisions of RSA 31:22. This article is not contingent upon the passage of Article 6 regarding charges for professional banking and brokerage assistance. Majority vote required.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions on Article 7? I don't see any questions, so I'm going to close public comment on Article 7. Move to Article 8, general acceptance of reports. Sue, could you select another member of reports?
Oh, I'll do this one. This is the template, boilerplate, general article, acceptance of reports. Shall the voters of the Timberlane Regional School District accept reports of agents, auditors, and committees as written in the 2018 annual report? Majority vote required.
Thank you. Any questions on Article 8? Go ahead.
Paul Boyd, Danville, once again, what happens if this doesn't pass?
Sue?
I'd be surprised if it didn't pass, to be really honest with you, Paul, but we'd have to go back and, I guess, not accept those reports. They're a general acceptance of the reports. There's no money involved in it, it's just generally accepting the reports.
Hold on, I'm going to see if I can get a different perspective.
Maybe I
Mr.
can
Pilo.
lawyer
I just
speak.
would suggest that the chair ask Attorney O'Shaughnessy.
I just asked, thank you.
Attorney Shaughnessy, how would you like to address this gentleman's question?
Nothing happens. Thank you.
That's an expensive answer. Okay, are there any other questions on Article 8? I'm going to close discussion on that one. Article 9. So I am going to let Stephanie here. So Stephanie, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to read Article 9, and then I'm going to let you speak on your article. Article 9, SAU 55 withdrawal study by petition of Stephanie Doobie. Shall the Timberlane Regional School District pursuant to RSA 194C1 create a planning committee to study the advisability of the withdrawal of the Timberlane Regional School District from SAU 55 in accordance with RSA 194C:2, paragraph 4A for its organization, operation, and control, and the advisability of constructing, maintaining, and operating a school administration unit to serve the needs of the Timberlane Regional School District. The floor is yours, and just FYI, to be fair to everybody on these citizen petitions, we're going to allow, we'd like you to keep it to no more than 5 minutes. Does that sound okay?
Perfectly fine. Yep, I'll be good.
Kathy, can you start that?
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Good evening. I'd like to just speak to this particular warrant article, and I'd like to just make a few brief points.
Stephanie, could you get a little closer to the microphone?
Yep. So I'd like to just speak to this and make a few brief points, if I may. Number one, Timberlane does not need Hampstead to assist in managing this district. Number two, the schools in Timberlane will remain intact and the children's education would be unchanged. Number three, Hampstead and Timberlane districts. It's important to note that each district uses different vendors and different evaluation tools. Number four, in addition, Hampstead children do not attend Timberlane. They have their own elementary and middle school, and kids go to Pinkerton upon entering high school. Number five, the cost. The study, will deal with any associated costs regarding the withdrawal, were it to pass. And number six, this is a positive initiative for Timberlane, and as such, I hope it will have the support of all TRSD school board members, as it would directly benefit the district's taxpayers, residents, and students. Thank you for your support.
Thank you. The next one, Article 10. Transportation costs by petition of Peter Belo. I'll read this one, and then we'll let Mr. Belo address it. In the event that the TRSD budget fails to pass at 2019 elections, to fully fund the TRC transportation contracts now in place in the 1920 school year by raising and appropriating $460,303 through taxation. Mr. Belo, the floor is yours for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Mr. Mascola. And I'm speaking for myself as a citizen, not as
Mr. Belo,
a...
hold on 1 second. I just want to hear.
So I appreciate you saying that, but typically when any board member is bringing something forward as a resident, they go and address the board from the floor.
I asked before the meeting if that was required, and I was told no.
Okay.
So proceed, Mr. Belo.
But I did ask, because I'm sensitive to that as well. And that's why I also started out that way. So,
You're chewing up your 5 minutes.
So, again, I'm representing myself as a citizen, not as a budget committee member. We heard a number of things, a number of pieces of information tonight about the default budget and things that it doesn't contain, that perhaps it should, or cannot because of recent changes in the RSA. This citizens petition merely tries to raise and appropriate the $460,303 that we appear to be short in the transportation budget, if and only if the Timberlane Regional School District budget fails and we fall back onto the default budget. So if the budget passes, this is null and void by the way it's written. If it fails and we go to the default budget, then we raise and appropriate the $460,303 as required by the transportation contracts. The other side of this is if the budget fails and this fails, then the default budget or the school board will be in an interesting position because they will, because of the no means no kind of rule in New Hampshire, they will not be able to transfer that 460,000 from other programs or salaries or what have you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Peter. Now I'm going to open up, and actually, Kathy, go ahead.
So I just have a question.
Kathy, can you just go to the microphone?
Yeah, okay. Thank you. I just have a question. It seems that if, and I'm assuming it's the operating budget, if that fails to pass, then you would like this to pass to fund. But you're also, if the budget doesn't pass and this fails, then you why would you want to tie the school board's hands to be able to deal with the short?
Well, I believe we all should want the budget to pass. Mrs. Sherman noted earlier that she believes the school board wants the budget to pass, so I don't look at that as a serious issue.
Okay. I got a gentleman over here. Go ahead.
Leo Grondin, Atkinson. How did you arrive at the 460,000? Because the budget difference shows 421 and change.
So I took that $460,303 from an analysis by Mr. Dowd as to what we're short in the transportation budget. So I put my faith in our business administrator. I have no idea how Dr. Farah came up with her number.
Okay. Mr. Sager.
Mr. Metzger.
Mr. Sager, go ahead. Jack.
Okay,
Well,
so you're running the meeting, that's right, you're the boss, okay. I'm all in agreement that no means no. If last year the school board had found an extra $1 million and decided to put in turf, I would have been extremely offended after what the voters said. But I do believe that there is a exception to that, and if it's safety, if there's an emergency situation or it's safety, I believe the board can go out and then implement that under that case. And I just wonder if there's any opinion on that from the board members or Mr. O'Shaughnessy.
Any opinions from the school board? Mr. Boyle.
I'll be happy to give an opinion. I agree with Kathy Gorman, basically no means no, and I think it's very unfortunate that if this does happen, that the school board's hands be tied.
Can I have a follow-up on, I mean, you made it sound like...
Hold on, sir.
Okay, sorry.
Dr. Farah, go ahead.
I'd also support Ms. Gorman and Mr. Boyle in regards to that. I think it's unfortunate that we have this here. I will support the proposed budget, but pragmatically speaking, I've looked at the last 15 years of budgets and default budgets and proposed budget, and my fear is, because there's a large difference between the two, is that the lower of the two budgets is going to pass. And if this passes, in addition to the default passing, you have tied the hands of whoever's on that school board. And that, to me, is not something that I agree with.
Hold on. I've got this gentleman next.
It's a response
Sorry.
directly to
Yeah.
I'm going in order.
We
Go
can
ahead.
finish one question. I mean, my question is, your response was that the 460 versus 421 was because of something Dr. Farah calculated, but the contract should be, it should be a number. It shouldn't be somebody's opinion, right? I mean, the contract says the number goes up either 421 or 460 or something different. So I don't know, why is there a difference between what's in the budget and what's in the warrant article? Straightforward question.
So, Peter, do you have that answer again?
Yep. First off, there's a couple different transportation contracts. It's not just one. And
It's still not an opinion, though.
I did not go to the original contracts. I did ask, and actually the budget committee asked for the business manager's take, or puts and calls on the default budget, and he said it was $460,303, and I put my faith in that.
Okay, so then the business manager can give us Like, where the calculation's coming from, I guess that's, I mean, it seems like a pretty straightforward question, so I don't know why is this such a complicated?
Hold on, sir, what is specifically the question that you're looking for the answer to?
He's got a $460,000 warrant article
Right.
that supposedly covers the transportation contract, which is shown in the budget as being a $421,000 difference. That's what,
Peter, give him the clearest answer you can on why you've got 460 when you said, Jeff, you got information from another source.
This is based on the contracts and projections for next year, and the contracts. That's as clear as I can make it.
Projections can vary.
the contract doesn't vary though, that's the, I mean, isn't this a written contract?
There's cost escalations in it on, you know, based on things like cost of fuel and such.
Okay, I don't
And-
think that
and
you
by the
really,
way,
I don't really
so-
think that's selling your warrant article though, if you can't really explain it better.
Everybody, hold on 1 second. Sir, hold on 1 minute. I think Mr. O'Shaughnessy might be able to.
I don't want to cut him off from the conversation about the amount. I can address the legal ramifications of the vote on this article not passing, but I don't want to cut off Joe. Okay, so, just to be clear, what we're talking about here is a special warrant article because it's made by petition and it requests an appropriation. If this warrant article fails, it will be deemed under RSA 3210 to be a purpose that has not received an appropriation. So the law says if the meeting deletes a purpose or reduces the amount appropriated or is to zero or does not approve an appropriation contained in a separate article, that purpose or article shall be deemed one for which no appropriation is made and no amount shall be transferred to or expended for such purpose, okay? What that means is you, the board, which has usually a pretty broad authority to transfer money in between line items, can't do that. There is a provision, the very next provision, 3211, emergency expenditures and over expenditures. I'm not sure that question's ever been asked, but this law does say that when unusual circumstances and emergencies arise during the year which make it necessary to expend money in excess of an appropriation, which may result in an over expenditure of the total amount appropriated for all purposes, which means you exceed your total budget, or when no appropriation has been made for that purpose, the board can go through a process of seeking approval for an emergency expenditure first by basically writing a letter to the Commissioner of Education, then it has to go to the DRA for approval. It's not an easy mechanism, but if there was truly an emergency and you would have to demonstrate an emergency, you would have to go to the DOE and the DRA and get approval.
Okay, thank you. Hold on. Mr. Collins.
So the question is, what's the purpose of this warrant article?
Peter?
I think that's a legal question.
The purpose of this article is to ensure that in the case of the default passing, or the...
No, I understand it. I'm saying if you can't expend any money for that purpose, if it fails, what's the purpose? Is it transportation? Or is it an increase in the contract? Based on the definition he just read.
This is to fund the increase, the contracted increase in the contract.
Right, but I think one interpretation of what he just said is you can't expend any money on transportation if this fails, right?
So, this is getting a little bit esoteric at this point because we're talking about a circumstance where the budget doesn't pass, right? So now we're in a default budget situation where it's really a bottom line number. Even though you've had to develop your default budget and show it by line item, it's really a bottom line number. You will have appropriated some money for transportation. I'm not sure what happens. Pretty novel issue. You may have a situation where you can't transfer money. If this isn't approved, you can't transfer additional funds into that line. In an emergent, you'd have to show an emergency. It may be difficult to show an actual emergency, but there would be that relief. So,
But I thought you just said you can't expend or add to that purpose from that or for that purpose. So if you can't expend for that purpose, and the purpose is transportation,
Yeah, it would be an emergency expenditure, so you would have to get relief.
Okay,
You may be told no. That this has never been tested in New Hampshire.
okay.
Timberlane has a tendency
Which-
to create new situations.
Gentlemen, hold on.
If I could just make one comment.
Hold on,
Okay.
I'm gonna let Dr. Metzler, put some input here.
There was an important question to the public in terms of how a contract with transportation may vary, and so, just really quickly, right, we have fuel escalation charges, we have regular ed students that we transport, we have special education students that we transport. Special education students go on IEPs, those are individual education plans, so those costs change while those plans are being rewritten, if new students are identified and in need of transportation. Sometimes drivers aren't provided and we may get a credit. Sometimes there are additional costs. So it really fluctuates quite a bit. So it's not as simple as they signed a contract and they guarantee that they're gonna move every student from A to B and from B to A and to all the sporting events in a given year based on a solid one number. And typically that number could fluctuate, and that's about a 10%, and I think that that's probably fair in that 440, you know, in terms of that, from 420 to 460, that 10% fluctuation I think that would be pretty much standard operating procedure as far as a transportation contract goes and how costs may change. Hope that makes sense to everybody.
Dr. Farah?
My concern here too, when I look at the transportation lines and I start to think about the ramifications should this pass, and to speak to Mr. O'Shaughnessy's point about it being emergency, you would have to consider that there's money for regular transportation that's mandated because we need to transport our students. But before you can move to emergency, we would have to drain money from athletic transportation, field trip transportation, and music transportation. And that will have to happen before you can even consider moving to an emergency situation. That's, again, why I'm against this warrant article.
Jen?
Sorry, Mr. O'Shaughnessy, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'm going to. I was just wondering if you could speak to RSAs about transportation and what we are legally required to provide. So part of that is special education. I believe we're legally required to provide special education, so I'm not sure if no would mean, like how does no mean, how would the no mean no rule apply when there's RSA stating that we have to provide that? And then beyond that, for regular ed transportation, I know our articles of agreement say, I think, specifies what grade we provide transportation for. But it also says in accordance with the RSA about transportation, which outlines how many miles students live from school, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, so what I really can do is tell you what the law specifically says. You have to provide, first of all, transportation to students from grade, I believe, 1 through 8, and you don't have to provide transportation by law to students in high school. You are required by law to provide transportation to students if that transportation is a component of their IEP, right? So, and that's a little more vague because the IEPs vary from student to student, child to child. So those are your legal obligations. You have articles of agreement. Those articles of agreement, I have them over there. If I'm not mistaken, it says grades 1 through 12. So
In accordance with RSA, I believe is the part after that.
So it's debatable, but it sounds to me like the community has voted to provide transportation all the way up through grade 12 through the Articles of Agreement. I don't know what the in accordance with RSA, I don't think it's a qualifier, which means you don't have to. I think it means under the Articles of Agreement, you have agreed to provide that level of transportation. What was the other question? The no means no part and how it's
Yeah,
not.
how does that,
Well, it ends up, I think you end up tying yourself back into a knot because if it's not in the default budget and it's a legal obligation, this becomes very circular. So I'm not quite sure how you get there. If you have a legal obligation, you're gonna have to find funds from those other non-mandatory transportation purposes and move them into the obligations first.
but with regards to this specific citizen petition,
Yep.
if it fails, can you say no means no because we have a legal requirement to provide transportation?
The no means no law does not have a prescribed exception for legal obligations. That's not in there, I've read it. If you have a legal obligation and you have an emergency where you can't otherwise fund it, you've got to demonstrate an emergency and ask for those funds from the Commissioner of Education. So there is no exception for mandatory obligations that's in the law.
All right, bring it to Kathy and then Dr. Messing.
So just for clarification, if.
Can you please go in front of the microphone?
Yes, I'm sorry. Just for clarification, if the operating budget fails and this Article 9 citizens petition fails, then the only no means no is the difference of the $460,000 some odd dollars or whatever it comes out to be. It's not because the default budget is going to raise and appropriate a specific amount for transportation.
I mean, I honestly,
Because
I
it says
have no,
fully fund.
I have no idea.
Not fund.
I mean, this is like, this issue is never, like, I'm sort of on the fly giving legal advice and trying to interpret multiple different statutes on the fly. I don't know how the DRA is going to interpret whether an appropriation has already been made for transportation in the default budget. Therefore, this, if this fails, no means no would or wouldn't apply. No idea. We'd have to figure that out as we go.
So
And that's really the best.
Hold
I
on,
can-
I'd like to, let me get Dr. Messing.
Yeah, we, as you're well aware, we have to provide services to more than one district, and why this was getting debated about, we went to our SAU attorney, Bob Casasso. I've given this to Mr. Boyle. They have not had a chance to read this. We got it late today, and Ms. Sherman, and it reads as such. I have reviewed your calculation of the Timberlane Regional School District's default budget for the 2019-20 school year with particular attention to the student transportation line items. As you are aware, New Hampshire RSA 189:6 mandates that school districts furnish transportation to all students in grades 1 through 8 who reside the required distance from the assigned school. You have advised that the Articles of Agreement of the Timberlane Regional School District mandate that the district provide transportation for pupils in grades 1 through 12 to schools within the district consistent with New Hampshire RSA 189:6. New Hampshire RSA 40:13(9)B instructs that the default budget shall include obligations previously incurred or mandated by law. Consequently, student transportation costs with any increases would be included, again, would be included in the district's default budget so the district can comply with the mandates of New Hampshire RSA 189:6 and the Articles of Agreement of the Timberlane Regional School District. So we're being advised to include that in the default budget. I'm recommending that the school board take another look at default and put that number in to avoid the discussion that we're currently having about the complications in the event the proposed budget fails and this warrant article fails. Thank you.
Okay, here's what you guys, I got two hands. I got Mr. Boyle, and then I had Sheila, and then Lee. So Mr. Boyle first, then Sheila.
Well, here we go again. You know, as Dr. Messy just mentioned, we haven't even seen this yet, which is very unfortunate because we've been, I can't begin to tell you how many meetings we've had about the default budget. So we'll be happy to look at it. We've had all kinds of council, wow, and all kinds of items in Timberlane here in the last 60 days. So, you know, it's a shame that things get to this witching hour like this, and we'll be happy to look at it, but I just find this ridiculous as a vice chair of the school board that we're getting this kind of information at this particular day.
Okay, you're here. Ryan, hold on. Sheila, you had something?
I just want to back up Ryan on this. I think it's pretty ridiculous that we're sitting here listening to an attorney's opinion when none of us have seen it. We're sitting here at a public hearing, hearing that we have an attorney's opinion, and not one of us have seen it.
But it's hot off the press.
Hold on, Sheila, are you all done?
I'm done.
Lee Doobie.
So I would just say that the default budget relative to transportation was done under information that we received from New Hampshire School Board Administration and their direction on how it should be prepared. So this information is certainly new information
something that we need to review, assess, evaluate, and digest before we take any kind of action on it. But the default was built around transportation based on information we had and direction we had from NHSBA regarding the current changes to the attorneys from NHSBA. Sure. Specifically to Article 10, this article scares the heck out of me because we don't really know if no means no on this or not. So, God forbid we have a perfect storm and we have a default budget and this article fails, our hands are tied, and this really forces us to go into an emergency situation. I'm against this article.
Okay, I go around and I see some people, so, Sean, did you have anything? No?
Go ahead.
Mr. Collins, you been waiting again?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Mr. Doobie, respectfully, you should be for this if you're concerned about it. Because if everyone votes for this, it's not an issue, right? So if people want to fund transportation and they don't want to get caught up in the no means no, vote for the proposed, vote for this warrant article, it's not an issue.
Agreed, but the voters vote with their wallet.
That's right.
But you just said you were against it.
I'm against it on the ballot entirely. I'm against
Oh,
it
being there.
Correct.
But
I'm
you-
against it even being presented.
But you might vote for it.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, I see. Okay.
All right, you're all set? So I'm gonna go to Mr. Sakis, who's waiting over here.
This whole discussion is a very strong argument to vote the budget. So that would be my recommendation. And as far as getting a legal opinion now at this bewitching hour, is it that you don't like getting the opinion or you don't like what the opinion was? Because I've always taken the legal opinion while I'm sitting up there as backup and security and should I say, protecting the district and the people in it. Thank you.
We have another question for Mr. Collins?
Just one last comment, if I could.
Sure.
Given this new information, hopefully the board will take this back as well and think about it and redeliberate the default budget to possibly include that money, and then we can take this issue off the table completely. Thank you.
And Dr. Metzler.
And finally, I just don't want the public to be misled. I've made my concerns about this default budget. I've asked for transportation to be fully funded, special education, food service, lines 4,200 and 4,600. They're well documented. I've expressed my concerns to this board many times, and we've been asking for these legal opinions, and I know Attorney Shaughnessy has provided advice that we should be including the full money for the transportation. This is a second legal opinion. You know, if they come in when they come in, we ask for them. I apologize to the board. I got this as soon as I got it. I forwarded it to Brian Boyle and Sue Sherman to share with the board, and then we're going to have an opportunity to look at it later tonight. No, this was I got it at 7. I got it late today, and they'll have an opportunity to look at that. I hope, as others have said, that they'll take a look at the default budget and fund it appropriately. Thank you.
Bill.
I just want to make sure I understand that to the superintendent. If you can make yourself clear, I'm not sure I caught it. This is not the first time they've gotten an opinion that this needed to be in the budget.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Whoa.
Wait, stop. Come on. Mr. Collins.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on that. So the question is, if the board's attorney is telling them they can do this, the attorney that would defend them in court, then why are they listening to other attorneys that would not be defending them in court?
Dr. Farrer.
I'm sorry, this was the SAU attorney, this was not the Timberland Regional School Board attorney. And as Mr. Boyle said, and other members of this board, we have not even seen this legal
No, I'm talking
opinion.
about what Dr. Metzler just said. That Attorney O'Shaughnessy
It's right there.
told you earlier
I'll tell you.
the
Ask
same
him.
thing.
I haven't seen this. Okay.
I'm not sure what
Isn't
the
Attorney
legal
O'Shaughnessy,
opinion-
isn't Attorney O'Shaughnessy the board's attorney?
I haven't seen this opinion.
We have not
He
seen
is.
this opinion.
And Dr. Metzler is saying that he
Well-
told you that you could put this money.
We have not
We
seen
have not
the written
seen
legal
the
opinion from Mr. O'Shaughnessy, unless I missed it.
Okay.
Anybody else see it?
Nope. No.
Okay,
No.
thank you.
That was an email from the business administrator. His attorney sent to the business administrator, and I believe that shared with the board.
And the board has not seen it. This is what we're saying. We don't have it.
And
We've advised the board properly all along the way. Thank you.
So I think if we take some of Mr. Collins' advice, which is
maybe at the next school board meeting, they can revisit this topic. That's all, I think that's all he's really asking. Take a look at this topic again and deliberate on it. Are there any other questions on Article 10? Okay, not seeing any. I'm going to close discussion on 10 and move to 11. And Kathy, would you be willing to read 11? At the microphone.
Article 11, high school athletic track petition, by petition of Rob Collins. Shall the voters of the Timberlane Regional School District raise and appropriate the sum of $312,000 for the repair and the replacement of the Timberlane Regional High School track, and to authorize the district to withdraw up to the sum of $312,000 from the existing school building construction, reconstruction, capital improvements, and land purchase capital reserve fund. No amount to be raised by taxation, majority vote required.
Thank you, Kathy. So, Mr. Collins, keeping it fair with everybody, I'm going to give you up to 5 minutes to state your piece.
So the reason I put this on is because I had heard through the deliberations of the budget committee that the student athletes in the track program cannot have home meets because the athletic director has determined that the track is not safe after it rains because the adhesion between the upper surface of the track and the underlayment of asphalt, I believe it is gone in some areas, if not all areas. So while it appears to be okay, if you just go out there and walk on it on a sunny day, the fact of the matter is bubbles form after it rains and athletes can be injured. So the athletic director made that determination. Our insurance company supported that determination and wrote a letter about it. And then there's an estimate on the facilities committee page off of the school board site for that amount of money. That's where I came up with that amount. So if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to address it. Even though I don't have much more than that. So.
All right, so that's your presentation on questions. So we've got Jen, and then I don't see this. Who's the second hand?
Kim.
Okay. Jen?
I'm just curious about, to ask a question about that comment, that bubbles form and whatnot after it's rained, if Mr. Collins has been on the track when it's raining, or after it's rained.
I missed part of your statement. Can you just repeat it again?
So the comment was about the track bubbling up when it rains, after it rains. And I'm wondering if Mr. Collins has been on that track when it's been raining or after it rains to see where it's bubbling up.
Okay. Who else had their hand up down there?
Sorry, I didn't hear the answer to the question.
The
Jen,
question
were you
was
asking
about
if you'd been on the track?
Oh, Rob, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I have not seen the bubbles, no.
Dr. Farrow.
I'm going to say that I'm against this article for two reasons. One, as most people are probably aware, we now have a strategic plan. One of the facets of the strategic plan is, one of the three prongs is focusing on facilities. The current bond ends in 1920. We'll be looking to redo parts of the campus here and hopefully go out for a new bond here in the next year or so. I think it would be short-sighted to spend this amount of money on a track which may actually move depending on what happens with the reconfiguration of the facilities. The other big concern I have is we have about $1.2 million in this capital reserve fund. We're looking at about $500,000 right now for the pack wall. We take this $300,000 out and we have a default budget that doesn't have money for capital in, we are going to be up against it because we're not going to have any money to withdraw. I know if we withdrew from this, it would require a special meeting. It's not something we want to do, but part of the reason to have this is in case there's something.
moving to let Mr. Safety.
Thank you. Rob and I don't talk a lot, but I do have to thank him for, sorry, Rob, just.
That's okay.
But I have to thank him for putting out this warrant, because I think that you folks up there were a little bit irresponsible in not putting this forth, knowing that it's broken. This isn't like the turf where, okay, this is gonna move the district forward. This is something that both the facilities director and the athletic director have deemed to be unsafe. Now, as far as the strategic plan, the way I see this playing out, it's gonna be for general maintenance. I don't think that's what you use a strategic plan for. But think of it this way. The strategic plan is at least, and I can tell you because I've sat on $100 million strategic plan committees, at least, if you want to do it right, 2 years away from presenting to the voters. Then, on top of that, what happens if that strategic plan, which needs a 2/3 vote, if you're going to bond anything, to pass? You need 2/3. It could go 2, 3, 4 years before it passes. What that means is if you're in the 6th or 7th grade, maybe the 8th grade, you never get to run a home meet on your track. Imagine if you're a senior. You will not get to run a home meet on your track. I have said we continue to kick the can down the road with facilities. I'll stick by it. The discussion we're having here tonight is let's continue to defer it another couple of years. It's not fair to the students. It's not safe for the students. And I've got to tell you, you guys keep kicking this can down the road. It's irresponsible to think that students can't even run on their track. And by the way, the students aren't the only ones that use the track. I know that Al and his wife, lovely wife Heather, are out there every day walking on the track. That's used by residents of this district. So now we have a liability. And you guys have a responsibility to mitigate that liability. And I'm not being critical that you didn't put on there, but now I'm asking you to fix things that are broken. The roof is broken. The track is broken. And who knows how much water is going to leak down through that roof and cause other problems. And as long as that water is seeping in under that rubberized top layer, yep. Now the asphalt's going to start to deteriorate underneath it. You need to fix it. And I support this art.
Let me back up. So I see a lot of hands. So I think I saw Jen, and then I saw somebody after Jen, then I saw Dr. Messler. So let me go Jen, Sheila, Dr. Messler.
I'm going to try and remember everything that was just said, because there are a couple points I wanted to address. Yes, there are residents using the track, and yes, our athletes are using the track to practice, and we've been told that it's safe for them to be using the track to practice. Also, there was a comment that was made, that you just made about being irresponsible, about not putting this forward or something, and I cannot speak for the whole board, but I can tell you that I went out to that track in the pouring rain, and I walked that track. I called several of my board members and asked them if they would like to come walk the track with me in the pouring rain, because I was curious where it bubbles up and where the problem is. And I've walked other tracks, and I have to say, I thought our track looked pretty darn good compared to some of the other tracks that I walked that had chunks missing, cracks, holes in their track surface that I thought were far more dangerous. And I'm not a track expert, and I'm not going to pretend to be, but I did feel like I went out and did my due diligence to walk the track in the pouring rain to try and understand what the concerns were. So to say that it was irresponsible, we didn't consider it.
I just want to clarify.
No, I'm going to go in order here.
Sure.
Sheila?
The problem that I have with this warrant article, and I'll be perfectly honest with you, is I believe the board has asked numerous times for the facilities manager to go and talk to the original people who put in the track and get estimates and talk to them and see what they can do about this. And I don't believe we've gotten an answer from that still. I believe that what came out of that meeting was that we have the original construction plans, is what came back to the board. So I would still like to see a second opinion on a price? Because as far as I know, this is the only price that we've gotten on this, and it's come from a specific company that just strictly does tracks, but I would like I'd like another bid on it.
This
Hold
is
on.
just, it's not a bid,
Mr.
it's
Collins,
just
Mr.
a budget
Collins.
number.
Mr. Collins, hold on. I'm gonna go to Dr. Messler.
Yeah, so that's not entirely accurate. We have talked about this quite a bit, and so a lot of people are weighing in that are potential experts or not experts. So we went to our insurance carrier to say, how safe is it for our kids to be using this track? Our athletic director is just telling us it's not safe. We're listening to the people that installed it. We're listening to all these people that walked it. I walk it too. I was on it Sunday. And our insurance carrier came back, and this is posted online, and everybody has it. Basically, it was you need to replace this track, and you need to develop a plan to close the track. And I'll quote, depending on the environmental conditions, the delimitation becomes more evident and presents a safety concern for users. The track conditions should be evaluated following in the environment, rain, snow, freezing, and thawing to determine whether the track is safe for use. The track should be closed when safety is a concern, and appropriate notification should be given to the potential users. As we discussed, scheduled events such as regional track meets would not be scheduled as track conditions could not be guaranteed in advance. That came from Primex, the company that actually covers us. And these kids aren't walking on the track, they're running on this track. So if there are variations in surface areas, that's a potential safety concern beyond just walking on the track. So thank you.
Mr. Steve, I'm gonna hold off on you for a second because I want to hear from Mr. Doobie to get a little bit of representation from everybody.
You're a fair man.
So, a comment and then a question. You know, to say that the school board has been irresponsible in not addressing the needs of the track yet, it's deeply offensive to me. You know, there are a number of other areas that require focus, not only the track. I'm not disagreeing that the track doesn't need to be repaired or replaced. But there are other needs, and there's a balance that has to occur. The funds are limited, the areas of focus need to be limited as well. So we have to maintain that balance. When we look at what risks are across all of our needs, and you factor in rain days versus sun days, days that have sun where the track is usable, it becomes a lower risk priority compared to all of the other priorities. So to say that we've been irresponsible, I don't think is accurate, because we're being as responsible as we can with the other needs, given the other risks. The question I have on the warrant article is, it states for the repair and replacement. Mr. Collins, is the intent to do both? Repair and replace some, replace all? That part confuses me.
Mr. Collins, good?
Sure, I'm just going off of what the Cape and Island Tennis and Track provided. And basically, they have to replace the top surface and then repair the underlayment. That's why I use those words.
So they all right, I get it. So it would be a two-part, repair the underlayment, replace the
Yeah, because supposedly the way, they can't re-adhere a new track on top because of what was used to adhere it doesn't allow the underlayment to be porous anymore. So I don't know for sure, but it sounds like you'd be in the same boat 5 years down the road because it wouldn't adhere as well. Not 5, but whatever. So that's their professional opinion that I went off of.
Yeah, so
That's all.
it's not an entirely new track, it's a reuse of what.
The underlayment, redoing the underlayment and then putting down a new track.
Got it, thank you.
That's my understanding. So I don't know if Mr. Gary wants to correct me.
No, let me, hold on. I'm gonna go in order. Mr. Sapien and then Mr. Boyd.
Thank you. Sorry if I offended you. All I'm saying is not to address it was wrong. If you're offended by that, oh well. You have, these are issues that have an immediate effect on the students and what they're doing. If there was something wrong with this PAC center, you bet you damn tootie it would get fixed right away. Okay? As far as, Jen, to your point, yeah, I've done the same thing you have a number of times. And I came to the same conclusion you did. But working for Box Industries, a huge paving company in the Northeast for 5 years, being in estimating and sales, I dealt with installations of tennis courts and tracks and this rubberized stuff. I believe, as I think, I won't speak for Mr. Boyle, the sub-base of that is perfectly fine. I believe that the asphalt part of it is fine. There may be an alternative to strip off that rubberized coat, scratch up the existing asphalt, and I don't know if that's a higher cost or a lower cost, but I will defend the athletes and their right to have a good, safe facility. This is not like some things we would like to do. This has an immediate effect on so many students and so much of the public that not to address it. I remember watching the budget committee where I believe you asked Mr. Boyle if there was going to be a warrant article for the track. And Mr. Boyle's response was, just look around, there are a lot of things that are subpar. So now is our new standard subpar is okay? I know we have an overwhelming amount of things to get done. I get it. But that's what happens when you kick the can down the road. Thank you.
Mr. Boyle, did you have something?
Certainly do. Well, you guys have kicked the can down the road. And this board, starting with this building, has picked up the can. And what we're trying to do,
Hold on, let's.
and what we're
make
trying to
this
do
personal.
here, and what we're trying to do here is, we've got an article in here to repair the path. This board has spent an awful lot of time on a capital improvement plan. Actually, Sue Sherman and her husband, and I guess the other people in this, long before I got on this board, actually started it. So there is millions of dollars of improvements that Timberlane is starving for. When I look at the track, I don't look at the track as getting to the top 20, 50. I mean, you've got heating problems in this district. You've got window problems in this district. We don't have just bottom pits of money here. So I am against the replacement of this article until it's at the proper time. This is just not the time to be doing this particular warrant article. My kids are all growing up here, now I've got grandkids coming in. I'm sure that everyone in the audience and people watching us at home, we don't really have these, we've got very good facilities, but we don't have perfect facilities. You're not going to go out onto a perfect football field, a soccer field, a lacrosse, or a softball, you know? You're going to see divots in this. Does that mean we close the event? Hey, you got to deal with some reality here, people. And so to me, yes, I'm against this article, and I'm hoping, yeah, my party this year, I think the board's party this year, is we're trying to push an operating budget, a teacher's contract, and then next year, we want to get on to a very large improvement of facilities. We can't do everything all the time.
All right, so before we go on, I want to remind everybody to please remain civil, respectful. It is getting late. This is a passionate topic for a lot of people. So lastly, let's try and get new information. That's what I want to hear first. You two can fight it out for new information.
All right, I just want to make one or two comments. One,
Let's go with one.
Mr. Boyle, you're right, there is a CIP, and last year, it was knocked completely out of the budget, which became a moot point because we had the default. This year, if we go back to the default, there's nothing in there to do any of this. And again, I will reiterate, yes, you're gonna start, but to do it right, let's have a lot of big Fortune 100 strategic planning committees, you're at least 2 years away to do it right. And what happens if it doesn't pass through by the voters? Now the track sits there dormant for years, and we can't put anyone on it because it's a liability issue. And it's really up to the administrators whether those kids can get on it. It's unsafe. It's not that we don't want to do it, it's not that we can put it off and delay it, it's that it's unsafe.
Mr. Collins?
Yeah, a couple of comments real quick. So my understanding was what Ms. Silva said was it's not while it's raining that the issue, it's after it rains, the track heats up, the water that's under the track heats up, and then it lifts. That's my understanding. Maybe it's wrong, but that's my understanding.
Exactly what Angelo said to us at the budget committee.
Right. So while you're on it and it's raining, you wouldn't see it. To what Dr. Farrar said, the capital reserve fund should not be an emergency contingent plan for capital expenses that should be taken care of in the budget. It just shouldn't be that way. That's my opinion. And then to Mr. Boyle's point, If we wait for a bond on this, as Mr. Sapia just said, we could be waiting years. This is something that's broken. We owe it to the students in the schools to fix this. Let's get it done. It's out of the capital reserve fund. That's why we put that money aside for projects like these, so that it doesn't hit the taxpayers. Let's use the money, get it done, and move on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. All right, I do not see any more comments on this topic.
I'm sorry, can I just make one point on that? Just
Yes, you
one
can.
really, really quick point, because there's been a lot of talk about the track and the students not using the track, but I just really hope the public understands that the track is being used. The students are still running track. It's unfortunate that they're not able to have any home meets, but the students are not being deprived of running track and attending meets and participating in the sport that they really enjoy.
Okay, thank you. All right, without any other comments on this, I'm going to close discussion on Article 11. Move to Article 12. Article 12. Amended Articles of Agreement to weighted voting by petition of Jack Sapia. Says, shall the voters of Timberlane Regional School District change Article 2 of the Articles of Agreement to incorporate weighted full-time weighted voting based on percentage of student enrollment of each town. If warrant Article 13 passes, this warrant article is void. So Mr. Sapia.
Hold on the stopwatch of this. It'll be less than 2 minutes.
Anybody want to take a bet?
It's real simple. I watched the SAU meetings on weighted voting. I get very discouraged, but I paid attention. I think it's something that could have been avoided. So I put this out there in the sense, or when I first addressed the school board, that, as Mr. Boyle said, it's the ultimate in fairness. Kim Ferris said, why would we allow a town, if they're only contributing X, to have X, Y amount of say? So I said, you know what, let me put something forth that is consistent. After I left the meeting with the school board and explained to them what I was going to do, I went back to my house and I watched the portion on the strategic plan and the conversation that ensued thereafter. And now I realize that this probably has more merit than I originally thought, because we have 4 very diverse towns with 4 very diverse sets of challenges. And with the strategic plan coming up and all the things that we have to do, the decisions we make over the next couple of years will have an impact for the next 20 or 30. And not only does it have an impact on your property values, but it has an impact mostly on the students for the next 20 years and the rest of their lives, and how we act as a community. And I think it's only fair, as I watch that meeting, that we portion out by percentage the amount of representation, the amount of students and input that each town takes. And I will take a cue from the school board, who was so passionate about how fair weighted voting was. Thank you. Did I win?
You won. Thank you. So we have a few hands up. We've got Boyle and then Dr. Barrett.
Mr. Sapir gave the school board credit for inventing weighted voting. We didn't. That's what happened. It's a state RSA. This weighted voting is set up by statute, and it talks about voting at the SAU level. And the verbiage actually says all votes should be done in a weighted format. So that's what it says, and that's exactly. So,
point of order.
So to me, there is a statute, and the way the weighted voting works at the SAU level, it goes in particulars exactly how you calculate a vote. if this article passes, there's no particulars. So, I just wanted to clarify to anyone watching that we just followed a state statute and followed it right to the letter of the law. That we didn't create it.
On to this, all Mr. Bueller, is Dr. Farah and then Mr. Bueller.
Yes, I just wanted to follow up on what Mr. Boyle said. The weighted voting is prescribed per RSA, and there's a very quantitative way to determine the votes based on the number of students in the district. While I appreciate the spirit of this, I don't think it could be implemented based on the ambiguity within this. Also, the wording incorporated full-time weighted voting, I think what you're trying to say is that maybe all the time you would have full-time weighted voting. Again, per RSA, that is not the case. You have to vote for weighted voting when you want to use it. So at the SAU level, we have to vote that every meeting or any motion that we want to use that.
Mr. Bueller.
Okay, I'd like to make a couple points about Mr. Boyle and Dr. Farah just said. First off, the RSAs do not prescribe that one must do weighted voting at the SAU level. That is an option that can be voted. Second, my reading of this warrant article, citizens petition, is such that it is not ambiguous at all if one knows how to do calculate percentages on how to apportion votes. Those things being said, I do unfortunately have a question about the ability of a school district to invoke weighted voting like this, and I'd like to have the chair ask Mr. O'Shaughnessy about whether this conforms to the RSAs about voting within the school district. I just don't know. I just want to.
Mr. Sapia, can you please step aside? Thank you. Mr. O'Shaughnessy. Do I have direction from my client? I don't know what you guys, do you want me to answer the question?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry.
I'll answer for the board, yes.
All right. I don't know.
Do you need permission for that?
No.
Yes,
In all sincerity, so in the SAU context, it's clearly the legislature has given you clear authority to do it. There's not a similar provision in the statute governing cooperative school districts. I know there are cooperative school districts that do some form of weighted voting. This is new to me, so this is the kind of thing as a lawyer I would spend a little bit of time researching. There is also the law, the constitutional concept of one man, one vote that I would need to research and determine its applicability. And I have some concerns that are similar to Dr. Farah's concerns about what percentage are you using? Is it ADMA, ADMR? At what point in time are you calculating that percentage? So it's complicated. So that's my answer. I don't have a solid answer. And my answer may be, I don't know, it's unclear because it is unclear in New Hampshire. Thank you.
Mr. Sapia, before you go, so I think when we're doing our discussions here, we're not always going to change the other person's view.
I'm not trying to do that.
Good, so.
Okay, so, Mr. Boyle is 100% right. It is prescribed by RSA at the SAU level that you have the opportunity to go to weighted voting. It's your right to do so. Now, do I think it was right the way you implemented it? Probably not, but that's my opinion, and you guys at the board now thought it could have been done in a more amiable, cordial fashion. I never once suggested, when I went in and presented to you folks, that you didn't have a right to do it, that it wasn't your right to do it. Again, I thought it was wrong. What I did say was that you guys made, Brian, you and I talked, you said there were 5 towns. Why should one town have an advantage over the other 4? You talked about percentages as input as opposed to having more weight over the other and relative to the amount of input that one town has versus the other. Now, if I didn't write that correctly, I can amend it on town hall floor, and I was wondering, the way I had it based was on a number of enrollment, by percentage of enrollment. You can change that to the financial side of it, but I don't think too many people in this room would be too happy the way that would turn out. I can tell you that Atkinson and Plastow have paid hundreds of millions of dollars more, hundreds of millions, and have only cared about the kids in the 4 towns. But I did not bring up the weighted voting issue. It was not sprung on anyone in a moment. But this is something that was brought up by you folks and argued to the T on how fair weighted voting is as a philosophy. And all I'm doing is saying is if that works for you at the SAU level, then it should be even more fair. The SAU level, we're talking about administrators, administrative assistants, administration. Here we're talking about property values, students' education, and the future for the next 30 years. I would think this is the board that is more important to have weighted voting because it has a direct impact town by town by town. And what really drove me at this at the end was understanding that some towns have other challenges that other towns don't, and they're gonna drive certain outcomes. And if they're the smaller, I mean, you just look at the outcomes of some of the votes. That's all I'll say to that.
Dr. Metzler.
Yeah, I think it's important. I know we're claiming that we're following the statute in terms of weighted voting, but if you read it, you'll see nobody really is in any of the SAU levels. We have 14 members on our SAU board. We really should only have 6, 3 from each side, and that's why there's weighted voting, because if you each had 3, but one district was paying 77%, then you employ the weighted voting. See, a lot of districts have too many members on their SAU, where you're only supposed to have 3 per district that has at least one school in your town. So I encourage everybody to take a look at it, read it. You'll see that we're not following it, unless the SAU's not following it in terms of what the SAU membership really should be. Thank you.
These things go up. David Burns and then Dave.
Yes, this is for the lawyer again, just for clarification for both this article and the next. Since this is changing the articles of agreement, what is the threshold for passage?
Just a simple majority unless, I mean, there are some changes that require different prerequisites, but this type of an amendment to the Articles of Agreement, if it's in fact constitutional, is a simple majority vote. Unless your Articles of Agreement require a greater majority. I don't think they do. I can review them again. This is all, you know, from a lawyer's perspective, do they require?
Yeah.
Okay, so you would require a 2/3 vote. And I haven't done a full legal review. This is like kind of, a lot of lawyers wouldn't even want to give you an answer. So I really haven't had a chance to spend time reviewing this to kind of put together a really firm.
So the tentative answer is 2/3.
Well, if that's what the Articles of Agreement require, then that would be a requirement for passage.
Thank you, that's what I needed to know.
Sue?
That was the point I was gonna make, that I believe it's 2/3, but I'd really like to give our legal firm a chance to do the research and give us correct answers instead of putting him on the spot and asking him off the top of his head, because our articles of agreement are rather unique, as we well know, so I would prefer he did the research and then got back to us on it.
You're going to have one busy next school board meeting. All right, are there any other questions on Article 12? Seeing none, I'm going to end the discussion on 12. Move on to Article 13, which is amend Articles of Agreement specific to board membership by petition of Jack Sapia. To see if the Timberlane Regional School District shall amend Article 2 from the April 30th, 1964 agreement to a membership of the Timberlane Regional School Board to be a 9-member board comprised of the following: Atkinson, 2 members, Danville, 1 member, Plastow, 3 members, Sandown, 3 members. Mr. Sagan, the floor is yours.
Less than a minute. This was another way to address this, different look, and it was based on percentage of students. Right now, Sandown has roughly a little over 1,000 students. Plastow has, I think, just about 1,000 students. Atkinson, 780, whatever. Danville bringing up the rears, and again, this was maybe a little bit.
What's the number for Danville's, Jack?
Off the top of my head, I think it was 538, I could be wrong, but that was roughly it. But I did it by the amount of students in the order in which they came in, because Sandown and Plastow were roughly the same number, gave in the same number of votes, and you want a 9-member board, and that's the way to do it.
All right, I got 2 of my members here, so John and then
So my concern with this, Jack, I understand what you're trying to do here, but this changes the article, and it doesn't take into effect changing enrollment from town to town. So there could be a change in enrollment that this would have to be changed again. And
Can I jump in?
please.
I'm going to jump in, because I mean, it's late, and I think you guys have spent a lot of time, and I don't think it's necessarily worth spending too much more time. What we're talking about here is changing the representation of the member towns in the cooperative, which is referred to in the statute as the apportionment. I know that term is used in different ways. When you change how the organization is set up, that's called a reapportionment under the statute. It's RSA 195, 19A, you have 19BC, and then you have 195, 22, which says a plan to reapportion, which means, again, it's the I'm trying to get the composition, the number, composition, method of selection in terms of the office of the members of the board. And in my opinion, this is an attempt to change the composition and the number of members. Required can be done either by the board submitting to the voters at any regular meeting of the district, so the board could propose this change, or shall be submitted to the voters on petition, which shall include the proposed plan, which it does, to the school board, signed by no less than 10% of the qualified voters in a cooperative school district at the next regular meeting. So this is considered a very profound modification that if you're going to do it by petition, you need 10% of the total population of the district to sign a petition. So procedurally, I hate to burst Jack's bubble again, but I think it's just invalid procedurally.
Good. Also continue.
So what do you guys think about that?
Stop, please, hold on.
Sorry.
I had one more thing on this, Jack. You only specifically called out school board, but you have 2 committees.
I thought about that,
So
but I think everyone in the school budget committee is doing such a great job. I wouldn't want to change that.
No. Todd, you had something?
Yeah, well, it was kind of like along the lines of what John was saying. I mean, if these numbers are based on enrollment today, it doesn't say that in here. So, like, would you need to reword this to actually have a moment in time as to when these numbers were derived?
I actually thought I had done that, but obviously I have not. The other thing I would tell you is that I bet you everyone likes the late legal opinion thrust upon them 30 seconds ago. But, if it takes a so let me ask you this.
No, hold on. You can have your conversations with Jim outside.
Fair enough.
Lee.
So, based on the information that we just received from Attorney O'Shaughnessy, what I understood it to mean was, in order for this to be a valid petition warrant article, there needs to be 10% of the total voter population on the petition signatures. How many signatures did this petition warrant article receive?
Not enough.
So,
Question, can I amend this on top? Does this go to town hall?
The only motions tonight are by the budget committee.
No, what I'm saying is, does this article go to town hall floor and then can be amended?
It should be, Jeff? Does that sound about right?
He did last year.
Can he amend?
He did last year.
Can he amend his citizen petition?
It doesn't seem like it's gonna be votes.
I would say it's not a valid one.
It's not a valid one.
Hold on, we got a lot of regular,
You got a lot of fake lawyers up here. Well, excuse me, I stand corrected.
We're a lawyer.
So I wanted to hear what all the other.
One real one.
So can you address the question if,
Yeah, so like, if you received a petition warrant article that had 10 signatures, it wouldn't show up on the warrant, right? Because it's invalid procedurally on its
Right.
face.
Right.
So typically you put a petition on there, but the only prerequisite, it has to have the correct number of signatures. So I don't think this is gonna be on the warrant.
it won't be on the warrant because it doesn't meet procedural?
Yeah, it's procedurally defective. It's not even valid to be voted on or considered by the voters. It doesn't have the requisite number of signatures.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Todd?
I was just gonna say, it seems like it would need thousands of signatures, just based on.
I have a week.
Okay. Any other questions on 13? Seeing no other questions, I'm gonna close discussion on 13. David, I'm getting tired. You read special meetings, please?
Okay. Special meeting. The Budget Committee will meet immediately following this public hearing to finalize the proposed budget for the deliberative session. The school board will meet in room 716, subsequently to take recommendation action on each of the warrant articles.
Well, just for clarification, 716 in what building? In this building? Okay, so there's going to be a public school board meeting in room 716 of the PAC. Public is welcome. And then the school budget committee, I'm going to ask my budget committee to stay, and we'll just meet right here on the stage? Sure. Sounds fair? So there'll be 2 public meetings immediately at the end of this public hearing. Next note, deliberative session. We'll have our deliberative session on Thursday, February 7th, 2019, at 7 p.m. in the high school gymnasium. Voter check-in opens at 6 p.m. in the high school cafeteria. And that should conclude our public hearing at 10:15 p.m. Is there anything else from anybody before I officially close this meeting? I'm seeing nothing from other members, so I'll adjourn this meeting at 10:15. Thank you. Stay here.